Okay. All right, we're going to call the March 2nd, 2022 working session to order. Robert, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Beeman,
Present.
Commissioner Hodge,
Present.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Present.
Commissioner Labar,
Present.
Commissioner Machieski,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
Present.
Commissioner Sanders,
Present.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Schenk.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to public participation. So here at working session, you have 1 minute for public participation. You'll be able to see a visual indicator at the podium. It'll count down, and when you get to yellow, that's a warning. And then at red, you will have to stop. And unfortunately, if we hit you at red, I will also have to interrupt you. Does anybody want to give any kind of public comment? All right. Well, we have 3 minutes at our next one. So if you want to stick around for the second one, where we'll have commissioner response.
Sure. My name is April Brown and I'm with Advisacare Home Health. And I'm here to talk on the auto no fault reform that happened in 2019. When the Senate bill was passed, Senate Bill 1 in 2019, it did not include home care in that language. So we are left with a 55% cut to whatever we bill. We bill $28 to $32 an hour for a caregiver to be in a home, giving someone care throughout the day. We are reimbursed at $14 to $18 an hour right now. We pay our caregivers between $14 and $18 an hour. As you can see, that's not sustainable. Can't keep it going. So we are asking boards of commissioners, you guys, to adopt a resolution to support kind of a fix to the reform that's been going on. Right now, in the House of Reps, Phil Green has a House Bill 5698 that he has introduced, and it has gone to the Insurance Committee.
Go ahead and finish that thought. Go ahead real quick.
Okay, he has introduced it to the Insurance Committee, and it does sit there. I met with Dare Rendon yesterday up in Lansing, and it is getting some footwork, but what's helping in it is the Board of Commissioners with those resolutions. I brought copies.
Okay.
We have 10 counties so far throughout the state that have signed on. I was
Thank you.
just in Genesee County this morning, so I'll talk when it's 3 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Or you could give it to Andrew right there and he will get it to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Do we have anybody else?
I'm going to talk as fast as I can. My name is Brenda Stumbo from Ipsy Township. One thing I would just like to request and remind everyone is that Washtenaw County is the 8th most economically segregated county in the United States of America. And I hope that you use the ARPA funds in the areas that need to be lifted up, specifically 48197 and 48198. Secondly, a resident contacted me to request that we have more therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists in the mental health budget that you're discussing. My minute up? Oh, I have more. Okay, good. I talk quickly. Thirdly, then I would ask that we request a policy that when you contract with other agencies and other communities that you just partner with the local government and notify them of the planning and zoning that will be occurring.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for Public Participation Day? And we are, I think you're looking at me because we're doing this as a hybrid meeting. So do we have anybody online that would like to speak?
No one currently has their hand raised. If you are watching remotely and want to offer a public comment, just raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak. I'm not seeing any hands.
We're not seeing any hands. All right, well, thank you. And we're going to move right along into report of the county administrator.
No report.
Okay, we're going to move over to report of the Board of Commissioners liaison. You weren't with us last time to be able to do this, so this is your first one.
This is my first one. A really brief report. As all of you might know, we've been putting out more regular newsletters via email. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew how to sign up for that newsletter, both so you can sign up for the newsletters and you can tell other people how to sign up for the newsletters as well. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. All right. So if you go to washtenaw.org/BOC, There is a shortcut, washtenaw.org/notify me. But you can also go to washtenaw.org/BOC. There's a button right here that says sign up for newsletter. You click that, and all sorts of newsletters pop up. The BOC general newsletter goes out monthly, and that lists all events, meetings, and other things happening at the county. So if people want to stay up to date on those, they can subscribe to that newsletter. So basically, I just enter my email in this box and then go down and click the little email sign next to the list. There are all sorts of lists. These are not just commissioner exclusive. These range throughout the county. So if people want to stay up to date on a number of different topics, they can. There are commissioner-specific newsletters, which are going to start going out quarterly this month. So I will report to all of you in the next couple of weeks about those, so people can sign up for those as well. So I just wanted to let you all know, now that we have more regular newsletters going out, how to sign up for those newsletters, how to tell people to sign up for those newsletters, because a lot of information is going out in that area. And that is my report.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our topic for today. So as we had last working session, we have objectives, and we have 3 objectives for the presentation that we're going to receive today, which is about an initial discussion on the 2023-2026 budget. So the first objective is that the presentation will help us better understand the financial state of the county and the investment trends of the county's general fund and non-general fund resources over the last 8 years. The second objective is the ensuing discussion will be about how the information impacts our work on the new quadrennial budget and to give administration and finance a high-level understanding of our budget goals. And the third one is the discussion is going to include a conversation on what type of process we would like to see as commissioners in terms of the development, review, and amendment of the new quadrennial budget. So this is going to only be the first of several working sessions that we have around the quadrennial budget. So just think of this as an initial conversation, and it's just an opening for people to begin to participate in that. It looks like Administrator Dill is ready to go.
I am. Good evening. I wonder if we can get the presentation up. I am joined this evening by the administrative team, as well as our CFO, Tina Gavalier, and her principal support, Catherine Jones-Arthur. She's in the audience. And we wanted to start with a couple of things today. You have in your possession, I believe, a copy of the preliminary financial state of the county. Can we, do you have that teed up as well? You don't? Okay, so we have a copy of it. I'm going to speak a few moments on that document. It is a preliminary document at this point, and it will become final after the equalization report is approved by you in April. So we'll be back before you with this. As you all know, we have always been strong stewards of county resources in Washtenaw County. And as we've moved through what I continue to refer to as our third winter of the pandemic, we continue to lean on the components of our infrastructure that are most important in our community and the foundational goals that we have established. A few of those, I'll just outline a couple of things that really we've tried to use to guide our work. One is our budget priorities and principles. This board has given us the guidance and direction around what we want county government services to be and how we want to respond to our community. We have made strategic investments in those areas, and we continue to try to make sure that our budget aligns with community values. The Board of Commissioners has adopted its 9th quadrennial budget. This is important for us. I've always said to our team that the 4-year budget affords us the opportunity to not only communicate our priorities and fund our priorities, but it is an opportunity for us to take those 4 years to do some analysis and determine how well we're performing. We have long-term labor agreements. Most of those are expiring. Those agreements have afforded us the opportunity to stabilize our budgets, stabilize our pension resources, and I'm pleased to report that we are funding our accounts, our accounts at a level, our pension accounts at a level that is higher than most in the state of Michigan. As you all know, we have a AAA bond rating. That is important for us, not only in the environment that we operate in, but if we are, as a community want to bond for any additional infrastructure components, we have the capacity to do so. The most recent example of that is our ability to work with our partners in Sylvan Township. Thanks to you all for your support in that area. It was an opportunity for us to ensure some stability for our community on the western part of our county. Our fund balance continues to exceed 20%. We have leveraged those dollars in what I believe is an effective and prudent way for our community. We continue to try to make certain that we are prepared for a rainy day, but also that we are able to respond to the emergent needs of our community. And then lastly, our debt ratio is less than 5%. That is perhaps an area of focus for this board moving forward as we think about how we grow and redesign county government. There is opportunity in that debt ratio that probably affords us resources moving forward. So I just use those as foundational goals. The rest of this document talks about our revenue by source. We are about a $130 million general fund. Most of that is property taxes. So just a reminder there. Police services contracts is our largest contracting component. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that issue, or that item, excuse me. And then lastly, there are some major assumptions that I want to call to your attention. One is we assume a 1.5% growth year over year. And if we were ever to deviate from that amount in any kind of meaningful way, that would create some challenges for us as an organization. Revenue sharing is something that we assume will be flat. And we have had conversations at this board table about the potential for those resources to not be available to us at the state level. So we continue to monitor that. Fees and services have fluctuated a little bit, and our personnel services certainly is another area of consideration for us. So those are the key components of what we have referred to as the financial state of the county. Once our equalization report is finalized, we will certainly be back to you all with more information related to that, and we'll have a more fulsome report at that particular point in time. So then to the item for this evening, we have a short presentation, a few slides in the slide deck that speak to financial trends in the organization. So can we make that full screen? Is that a possibility? So while he's working on that, we fully expect that this conversation will inform our work moving forward, inform our opportunity to provide you guys with additional data. There's probably some areas of this presentation that you will want more granular data. Some of this might not be a surprise to you all just in terms of how we are operating, but there is a fundamental point that I want to make sure that I get across this evening, and that is that we have started to migrate, pivot our resources towards the health and human services areas of our service delivery, and that shows true in our budget. We've often talked internally about we are what we invest in, and we have been investing at a higher level in health and human services in our community. So please stop me at any point in this presentation. Again, I'm joined by Tina and Catherine. We'll answer any questions that you have at the conclusion of the presentation. If there are additional items that you all are interested in, we will absolutely provide that information. And again, we hope that this will inform our work moving forward. So this first graph looks at the county's general fund and non-general fund expenditures over a time horizon. We had talked a lot about trend data and the importance of being able to see how we're investing our resources and what those returns look like. The one graph talks about our growth since 2014. Our general fund expenditures have remained primarily flat, growing roughly about 12.5%. Non-GF expenditures have grown by almost 28%. And we'll talk more about that in later slides. But I wanted to make sure that you all had a clear picture of what we're doing with general fund and non-general fund areas. Then this next slide, and I know some of this is difficult, so please stop me if you have specific questions. This next slide points to what I talked about in my earlier remarks. You can see our net non-general fund expenditures in the area of health. You can see that they've grown throughout the county, and it aligns with our need to invest in those areas. The other piece that I want to point out on the slide is our debt service. We've been successful in refinancing much of our debt. That's led to a bit of a reduction. And for me, that is about making sure that we are as efficient and as effective as possible with our operating costs, and thereby that creates opportunity for us to invest in our community at a higher rate. And of course, there's some other categories there. They're primarily flat over that time horizon, but certainly if you have questions, we'll get you more data around those areas. This slide offers a bit more detail. Certainly, as you think about debt service, as we think about the refinancing of our bonds and all of that, we see that downward trend. We also see that increase in health and human services. It's grown by 63 million or 56%. And again, back to my opening comment, we are what we invest in this community, and we have pivoted over the last 7-8 years towards health and human services. The second part of that slide talks about the other areas of non-GF expenditures. Most are flat. There are some fluctuating points on that graph that we continue to focus on. You see the spike in the judicial area. Much of that has to do with the change associated with the MIDC.
Greg, a quick question on the Public Works Fund. That seems to have shot up there. What is that associated with?
Tina, you want to take that?
General fund, so therefore for public works activities, late that construction, that sort of thing. Oh. Thank you, sorry.
The other point of note there on the slide is in 2020, there was a dip in general government that had to do with the reduced accommodation ordinance tax. Obviously, given what's going on in our external environment, there was an expectation that there would be some reduction in that area. These are a little bit easier to read, at least for me and my aging eyes. I think the important pieces there are changes to the size of the graph, the pie graph from 2014 to 2022. The area of health is a larger component of what we do as an organization, and that's certainly called out on this slide. And I don't know, I'll pause right here. I know there's a lot of information there. I don't know if there are specific questions related to how our non-GF is being allocated at this point. If not, I will, yes.
So your social services has gone down slightly. If I'm reading that right. From 2014, it's 12% now, and it was 18%.
You want to take that one?
Yeah, my battery's dying.
That's
so
all right.
I'm sorry. Hold on one second so I can see the screen.
Just curious about why it has been reduced.
So social services would be a part of what activities OSA does. So I would anticipate, without looking at the details at a high level, it has to do with federal and state funding sources. And I think that's probably a divestment from them, therefore has increased our requirement or the board's priority in funding those activities, potentially.
So it's not necessarily a reduction. Are we saying that it's a shift?
It's
So it's
also,
shifting from our responsibility to receiving what, more federal funding or?
it's also a shift in the totality. So, right, over time, we have increased, so it becomes smaller part of the pie of the total. Does that make sense?
I'm trying to make it make sense because I'm also looking at the culture and recreation, which has gone up 1%, but social services, I'm making the assumption that's a safety net.
Commissioner Scott might have
Just-
oh, you got a bunch of hands over here. You guys got answers, Commissioner Scott, Commissioner
They
LeBar.
don't look so exhausted.
You say don't look
We
so
haven't
exhausted.
started yet.
Always exhausted, Commissioner Sanders. I'm not exhausted with you. I'm just, first I was gonna say maybe it was an issue of it not being as a percent, but that's not the issue. Because it's still in there as a percent, so it's not the amount of money that's changed in terms of, I guess this is a question for Tina too, in terms of totality, because a percent would reflect that. If it was the amount of money, it would not reflect that, but a percent reflects it. So I guess I'm just looking for more clarification to your question about that in terms of thinking about percent. And if it's that we've shifted some of the things that are in social services to other categories, that could be part of it. That's one way to think about this, if that is the answer. And there was something else, but see, like Commissioner Sanders observed, I look tired because I am, and maybe it will come back to me, but I don't see it as like a shifting of more money because it's a percent. So just, I guess it's a clarification for what Commissioner Sanders is asking.
Yep.
Commissioner LeBar you had a follow-up.
Would just relevant to that, the 2014 numbers probably don't reflect spending on what's now CMH and what was a separate entity at the time. And my guess is that probably skews a little bit both classification and volume in the total. Tina, I don't know if you know speak to that or not. I'm not asking you to, but I can't imagine that now the second largest component of county government is insignificant in terms of that pie chart.
No, I think it's just a recategorization.
Okay.
Sure, because.
Tina, I'd love to say I can hear you and I cannot. I'm sorry.
Just get
So
that
is it-
microphone close to your mouth, 'cause nobody at home.
Is it soft money? It's soft money. Yes, it's not general fund money.
Oh, so there's a whole bunch of questions out there, and Commissioner Machewski has a question
Very
too.
difficult without the details in front of us of what the numbers are. But I suspect that in totality, we have increased and it's just a recategorization. And I guess I can offer of getting the more details of each of the total will help with additional information.
Okay,
Does that help?
I think that helps.
No, it doesn't help me. I'm just gonna say it's my frustration that's why I feel like we're here. So I feel a little frustrated, but I understand the pressure you're under.
Go ahead, Commissioner Machewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about a different item, actually, instead of social services. I wanted to ask about the debt service line. It looks as if over the past 6 years, and I'm referring to the chart previous to the pie chart, over the past 6 years, the debt service has been reduced by 80% approximately in terms of real dollars. What amounted to that? What's gone off the
We have
books?
paid a majority, all of our debt will be paid off by 2029, I believe. So as we refinance and have savings from our refinancing, our debt cost as a total is also less.
Okay, and is it fair, I mean, when you look at the growth, then I think it would be fair to say that as we've reduced our debt payments, we've increased our health expenditures. Although the ratio is much different, but that's where at least a part of what we had been previously spending on debt is now available to spend elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we're pulling back up the slide. As she pulled the slides back up, Commissioner Scott and others spoke to wanting to have more information in the one area. We will work to get that information back to you all as quickly as we can.
I apologize.
Commissioner Sanders, I do want to make sure that before we move on, that we have, that you're satisfied with us bringing back more information on that topic as well.
Yes.
And I apologize for the technical difficulties.
While we're doing that, I just want to say, I do appreciate looking at trend data. I think this is really helpful to help us understand where are we shifting priorities over time.
So what's the will of the board while we bring this up? I know that you guys have the document in front. It would make it difficult for us to follow at home without it on the screen. So we'd ask that if you bear with us for a few additional moments, we may have it up.
Yeah, does anyone else have questions while we wait for it to, oh, here it is.
We're at general fund expenditures by function.
Oh.
Uh,
I'm on the screen, but it's not reflective up there.
I can pull up the PDF.
Okay. The next category, just to give you a heads up, is general fund expenditure by function. No surprise that a good portion of the county's general fund is spent on public safety. That will be displayed prominently in the next slide. Most of the revenue or expenditures have remained flat. There's a dip as you know in 2020 as we start to receive CARES dollars and as we start to bring dollars in that offset some of our expenditures. Are you moving? Yeah, 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 yeah. So that was that. The next slide, please. This slide again talks a little bit about general fund expenditures. I talked about the CARES funding covering a significant amount of public safety expenditures. That's the dip that you see in that top line. There are some other areas that have spiked just a bit. General government spiked due to us receiving some of those CARES dollars back at the end of 2019 into 2022. So you see some of that. It's important to know, so the one other category that you see up there, the legislative component, it is on the slide. You see what looks like a pretty large dip. You know, travel and other expenditures have been factored into that. And I think that based upon the dollar amount, that slide looks a little bit skewed, but that's the reason for that. Tina, I don't know if you want to say any more about what's in that category.
Yeah, it's the biggest increase between 17 to 2019 had to do with the travel accounts. Remember, you did an allocation per commissioner, which was substantial at that point in time, and then just normal personnel services increases. And then very specific Board of Commissioner initiatives. For instance, the Youth Commission would be in the legislative org for Board of Commissioners.
So, and then the last category there is one that Commissioner Matieski just raised. You know, we are actively paying off our debt. There was a period, a point in time in the 2000s where we spent a lot of money increasing or a lot of money to support, that we paid out a lot of money to support our infrastructure. We have moved away from that. We have refinanced the debt appropriately, and we are paying off our debt service at a really high level. So you all are to be commended for that work. Again, another pie chart that looks at the general fund comparison by function. Really not much to see here. You can see the modest growth in a few areas. General government grew a bit, and that growth is tied to bringing the equity office online. I'll pause here again because this is the general fund and an area that we focus. I don't know if there's any questions related to this slide.
Go ahead, Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. One quick question on the last slide there. The legislative, that looks like a pretty substantial increase. Can you say more about what that was for again? You mentioned a little bit, but I didn't realize that it looked like such a large increase.
Part of it has to do with the travel counts per commissioner. I believe it was 63,000 per commissioner was added, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on the number, please. And then some very specific Board of Commissioner initiatives, for instance, the Youth Commission, that's relatively new in the last few years, that would have been included in that increase. And then just normal, I would say personnel services costs for salary and fringe benefits. Because since that's the biggest part of the budget, I anticipate there was a portion of the increase for that as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, okay. So there are a few things that fall into that category that, like Youth Commission, I would think of that as certainly an initiative of the board, but like not a legislative function necessarily.
Right, it's within your budget, and then it gets identified in the legislative function because the Board of Commissioners, that's their function, that's your function of how we classify things in the financial statements. So think of it in terms of activity.
Okay,
That help?
I think so, yes. Thanks.
And with all of this, obviously, I think in some areas there are going to be more questions than answered. We will absolutely get back to you with responses to your specific questions.
Well, that's why we're just having the opening discussion, so it's all right. Commissioner Labar had a question though.
Well, just another reminder that the 2014 numbers wouldn't reflect now the full-time position we have with the liaison. So that probably had an impact, as well as some of the adjustments in terms of service on committees and compensation. It'd be great if possible to also maybe have a 2018 or 17 number, just to take a few of those things into account. No need to scramble today. Thanks, Chair.
Good point.
Anything else on this slide? Everything else is fairly consistent. Andrew. And again, this is general fund central charges, the appropriations by function. Just looking at my notes, I don't see a whole lot here. Mental health grew a bit there. There's a deficit repayment plan that impacted that number. The largest jump in OCD, 2014, 600,000 to $2.6 million. Obviously, those kinds of changes have an impact and are shown here. But really, by and large, no major change to any of that outside of those areas that I just mentioned. The judicial function did double. Again, the MIDC piece to that is factored into that equation. And then again, building on that last slide, this is the general fund comparison by category. Again, you see the modest changes listed here. That's the last slide that I have. Again, as I said a moment ago, we do anticipate that this is going to create, in some areas, more questions than we have answers for this evening. We wanted to have a general discussion this evening, and we will bring you back the data requests that we hear this evening. So with that, I don't know if there are specific questions related to this presentation this evening, primarily focused on expenditures. I certainly understand that there's another part of that equation, our funding, the resources that we bring in. That is certainly something that we'll bring back at a later date as well.
All right, Commissioner Morgan, I know you got a question.
Yeah, I guess this has been a long concern of mine with our budgeting process, is that there's no way an average person can look at this and understand any information from it. Because the large changes in the budget are often related to some other logical thing or reclassification or something, as opposed to an actual shift in priorities. Because we haven't made significant shifts in kind of what we choose to fund, at least I don't think, over all of these years since 2014. But if you look at these tables, these charts, it might give you that impression. Is there some other way that we can look at in the future or looking forward, or particularly for this budget process, to be able to say, here are the things that we've funded, the types of activities, maybe as opposed to budget, budget line items or budget categories? Because what I think all of us would like to be able to see is, where are we shifting our priorities? And I can't tell that from this. I get a sense of it, but I really can't tell that. And I don't know if there is a good way to do that, but that would be my hope, is more activity-based, or, I don't think the general public really thinks of any difference between non-general fund and general fund either. And so when they see a shift in one or the other, that means nothing to them. I know it absolutely does when it comes to accounting and, financial terminology, but I guess my hope would be that we'd find a way to say, here's what we've been doing since 2014 or some period of time. Here's where we've shifted some priorities. We've invested in some additional funds in these areas, maybe save money in these other areas, reduce debt service, things like that, in a logical way.
Yeah, so commissioners, let me respond to that by saying we had a similar conversation this afternoon with this information. What was requested of us is some trend analysis data that tends to be cumbersome. I think what I'm hearing, what we need to come back to you guys with is a roll-up or a macro level document that really walks us through year over year how those budget numbers have changed or fluctuated. So we are already on top of that. We're already preparing for the next time that we're before you. And I think that document will answer many of the questions that I've heard this evening. I recognize that this is very difficult to follow. When you talk about general fund versus non-GF, and certainly the conversation early on was, well, do we add revenues to this conversation? That would have complicated this conversation even further. So we certainly understand, and I'm hearing it tonight, that we need more of a macro level presentation, and we'll work to make sure that that's the deliverable that we provide to you all at our next opportunity to chat.
I'm curious if we could do something like the report that came out about the public safety and mental health millage. That seemed to cover things that were used by that millage in a really easy to understand way. Is that kind of fitting with what you were thinking, Commissioner Morgan?
Sort of, but a perfect example might be racial equity. I think you can't see anything with racial equity in here. Instead, you think it looks like we spend more money on general government.
Right.
That's not the message we're trying to send to the public. We're trying to send a message of, hey, we're actually investing in racial equity by having this office and these positions. But if you just look at this, you might look at it and think, oh, they're just spending more money on themselves than general government. So maybe that's a perfect example where I'd like to say, hey, here's what we're spending on racial equity. Here's what we're spending on public health in totality, non-general fund and general fund. Here's where we're providing more childcare because we receive more money from the state or something like that, to really show what types of things we're spending that money on. But I don't think that would, I think that would help as well. But I think what I'm thinking is really more of an easier understanding of where the money is going.
Break out the categories a little bit more.
Right, instead, because the financial terminology and the budget categories just don't seem to do that.
Yep. Commissioner Scott.
Yeah, I think to Commissioner Morgan's point, it's like what's in the categories? Like if, this is a public meeting for a reason and we want people to understand what's in the budget and be there, to follow what we're doing. So maybe some explanation, like this is what's in the categories. And when you see things like personnel costs decreasing by 3%, why did personnel costs decrease by 33%? Why did health department decrease by 7%? Things that maybe explain things a little bit further. Why did legislative costs go up? Well, we have this great new liaison who's doing more community outreach for us. We have the youth commission. So explaining those things and showing what's in those different buckets so people can understand those things really helps us foster more community engagement with that budget, which is what I think we all want by bringing that discussion several times to working session.
So Commissioner Scott, just to respond, so I hear you. So, we have a 130-page budget document or whatever it is. And so the challenge is to distill that down to something that everyone can understand, beginning at a macro level. I'll just take a category. We can talk about general government or the general government component. Talking about it at a high level, here's the trend analysis of how that budget has grown, decreased, increased over the years. Here's what's included in that line item. So in I'm obviously I'm making some of this up. In 2018, the general government category increased. It increased because we brought the equity office online, and not because we grew the legislative component of general government. So being able to address those kinds of things, absolutely. Pick on the sheriff's office again. So the sheriff's office remains flat, then you see this dip, largely due to the CARES dollars coming in and the offset there. There are other times when the CARES dollars created an increase because we receipted those dollars. So being able to start at that high level and then drill down to why these changes are happening, that's what I'm hearing. That's what we will bring you back next time around. Does that make sense to everyone?
That makes sense. Commissioner Rochester, you got a question? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna go back to some of your charts on the expenditures, and we see that my previous question about the debt service is that's creating an opportunity for dollars to be allocated elsewhere. You've shown us that we're spending more on the health category. What do you see as we look forward the next 4 years in terms of potential threats that may take dollars away from us that we aren't deciding about but are external? Is there something going on in the judiciary or in public works that may require more county expenditures that we need to be aware of at this point?
That's a complicated question. One of the things that I've talked to our team about is one, the excess capacity in our infrastructure. We had a really good discussion today about right-sizing the county's infrastructure, largely created around our urban cores, but is that the appropriate service delivery model for us moving forward? There are some threats in the IT area that really require us to focus some of our resources protecting our technological environment. So those are some areas that we continue to focus on. Revenue sharing is an area that, while the state general fund ebbs and flows, in prior years, we've always been concerned about the revenue sharing going away and the potential for there to be a $7 or $8 million hole in the county's general fund. Spending down, determining what's the appropriate level of fund balance has been a conversation around this table for a while now. We shouldn't be the taxpayers' piggy bank. That's in my humble opinion. I step out of my role and talk about it as a taxpayer. I don't expect for us to grow the county's fund balance to a level that has an impact on our ability to change, modify, and create a new service delivery model. So those are just some things that come to my mind immediately. We are at some point going to have to focus on the fact that our costs for personnel services is getting dangerously close to the amount of property taxes that we collect. So that is certainly an area of focus for me as we continue to move forward. So those are just a few areas that are on my radar moving forward and likely will require the board to have dialogue about moving forward. Then the last thing that I'll say is shifting board priorities. Are a priority for us in administration, the ability to make sure that we do the thorough analysis of our current business model stop doing those things that we shouldn't be doing anymore, or that require us to make modification, and then begin to look at how we reallocate those resources to other areas of the budget. Those are some things that now I could probably talk ad nauseum about, but to your question, which I think is an excellent one, those are the kinds of things that I think should be a regular component of our agenda in this room.
So before I turn to Commissioner Labar, I just wanted to layer on that point that Commissioner Machewski made and say that in a future discussion, I'd like for us to be able to look at the police services contracts and what component that makes up of the overall expenditure from the general fund, especially since the contracts only go through this year.
And Commissioner Hodge, so I apologize to you all. I had that in my notes. I glossed over that. That is an important point. I had a conversation with Sheriff Clayton yesterday about that. As you all know, those contracts expire at the end of the year. So now is the time for us to begin those discussions. We want to make sure that our community partners have ample time to engage with us, and we have ample time to communicate back to them around what the landscape looks like moving forward. But that's an excellent example of where there are opportunities might exist for us. Continued response to the pandemic. We've talked a lot about, are things getting better or worse? Are we plateauing in areas or not? But our ability to continue to be able to respond to those kinds of things should be a priority for us, and we should always have that on our radar. One of the reasons we've been able to respond in the way that we have is the strong stewardship of our resources that we've displayed in the past. Where some of my colleagues around the state wrestled with how to bridge a gap prior to those CARES dollars coming into the picture. We just didn't have that in Washtenaw County. And I think it's by and large because of the stewardship of this county board of commissioners. There's still much work to do. We have talked about as a priority, looking at some things that have been historically commitments of this board. I think about East Side Rec Center and what role we play in those kinds of conversations moving forward. We've had a lot of dialogue here recently about what the domestic violence framework looks like. If we're going to change that model, we are going to step into that space, we're going to lean into that space, and we're going to create a structural funding strategy that supports it. So those are certainly other things that we really have to be on our radar. The climate change work, I think it's an important piece for our community. We need to be thinking about how we fund that work structurally moving forward. We have some goals that I think are appropriate for our county. We need to make sure that we have the resources in play to support that. And then finally, we've talked a lot, our community, our partners have talked a lot about the American Rescue Plan dollars, and rightfully so. We have a $71 million infusion in our community. But the note of caution that I've said from day one is, listen, these are not structural dollars. So if we're going to build a programmatic model based on ARPA funding, we're going to have a price to pay at some point in the future. So I want us to be mindful of that. I want to get those resources out to the most vulnerable in our community and do it in a way that makes sense, that's immediate, on and on and on. But it does give me a little bit of pause if we're going to start building out structural programs that we don't have dollars behind into the future. So again, another opportunity for us to have discussion, another opportunity to make sure that our community partners are at the table when we have that discussion, and that they understand the need for us to make smart decisions about around the resources that we have.
All right, still got a few more questions, Commissioner Labar, and then we'll get Commissioner Morgan.
Chair, I think this is a question to you to determine the discussion here. Do we have any additional objectives or agenda items that you are looking for us to hit? If so, I'll hold my question. If not, I have another budget item that I wanted to just bring to the board and just wanted to see where we're at.
Oh, no, we're good. It's all budget today, so feel free to ask the question.
Okay. I have been grappling with this concept for a little bit, and thought initially that I would bring it to this body more fully baked. But I think given the quadrennial nature and given the timing on the calendar, it's probably best to raise it now. Greg referenced that we'll hear from Mr. Patel next month in terms of what the numbers say. And I think there's two things here. We have consistently, as a board, going back for years now, prioritized human services. And what I think we need to do or should do in this quadrennial budget is better define what we consider to be human services. I've always used the big three consideration of public health, CMH, and those entities under OCED. But the guiding principles, the ones that are up on our wall there, in previous iterations, we've included public safety, specifically language that said inclusive of public safety, and that had its own discussion, blah, blah, blah. If we define it, I think that'd be great. Here's what I would like to also propose, and what I've reached out to some folks at Michigan State for. I think it would be wise to write an ordinance that mandates a certain amount of mills that we collect and operate on, that be dedicated toward those services that we define as human services. And just so I don't scare anyone into thinking Andy's sniffing around for a new millage, what I'm saying is we operate on the same mills year by year by year. And if you chop up what we spend on human services, it comes to whatever it comes to. Let's codify that at roughly the same amount. That will give a lot of direction, one, to our budgeting team. Two, it will be something for the 9 of us to point to in terms of hopefully a little bit different laying out of our priorities. And 3, I think it will give us a place to build on or to protect in future budgets going forward. I'm happy to keep working on that and bring back what I can in the next few weeks, and then just, throw it out in an open discussion. But that is an idea that I think would have some impact on how we budget here, but would probably, or at least I hope, help all of us in terms of being able to point to our commitment on human services and go from there. So I just wanted to bring that up since it's a working session. And
Yeah, I'd say please do keep working on it. And I see people have their thinking faces on, so it seems like it's of interest. Yep, that's a nod. All right, go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of requests. One, to your previous comment about the police service contracts. Those get lumped in with public safety, and it looks like we are spending a sizable percentage of the general fund on public safety. But I don't know that those are truly, in my mind, just expenses, because they are reimbursed. They are contract services with local governments that are valuable certainly to us and to the local governments. Could we see a breakout of kind of what percentage of that 51% of public safety is related directly to that? And then how much of that is actually reimbursed? Just because I don't want if you compare our county public safety budget to another county, it probably looks like we spend a significantly higher percentage on public safety. But if that's being reimbursed through these partnerships with local governments, I certainly see that as a positive and something that's mutually beneficial. And I don't see it as just a straight public safety expense, because they would be spending those dollars on public safety anyway.
I would just respond to that by saying absolutely. You've likely heard Sheriff Clayton talk about that quite a bit over the years. It isn't just a category amount. And to your point, if you take a look at that, it looks like we're spending almost 60% of the county's general fund on public safety. So it gets back to what I described at a napkin level, I guess is the best way to describe it earlier. We need to give you that larger, hey, here's the expenditures, but here's the breakdown. Here's the revenue coming in that offsets that general fund expense, and here's what we actually spend. And let's not forget that there are components of what the sheriff's office does right now that really fall under the purview of the County Board of Commissioners that we've asked the sheriff's office to absorb. I think about the emergency management component. I think about community corrections, those areas. So we asked the sheriff's office to assume those responsibilities. That also falls under that umbrella. So and I think it was Commissioner Scott who said it best, listen, you got to give us this high level, this macro level view of what a category looks like. And then let's disaggregate that data down and talk about where the expenditures are, where the revenues are. And that gets us to a bottom line. And I think there's a way for us to do that year over year, because from year to year, there's been some major change. I think about the MIDC and that shift. That was driven by the state of Michigan, but it has an impact on how we budget. So those kinds of things I think are critically important to bring back to you all after hearing this conversation this evening.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because I think if I want to give people the tools to effectively criticize us, if there's justification to criticize us for what they see as us prioritizing the budget. But I also want to make sure we have the tools to say, hey, here's where the money is actually going, because there's so much more that happens in these departments than just a category. So something may fall under a budget, as we've mentioned already, that doesn't necessarily just fit in that budget, but it's a true public service or a positive thing for the community. We want to be able to highlight some of those things and to be able to compare over time where we're investing in those priorities. So that would be great. The other item I did want to bring up at some point is just wondering what the proposed calendar and kind of engagement process is planned for the budget process this year. I think that's something that is extremely important to me. Knowing really early in the year here, it's already March, what that process is going to look like, and ensuring that we have an effective timeline and process in place to engage the community, talk to the public about that, and put information out there.
So Commissioner, we do have a draft timeline. We will share that. We'll make sure that we share that by the next meeting, perhaps something that we can add to the agenda to present on at the next meeting, but that is absolutely in the queue. So we'll bring that back to you. Chair, I saw
Commissioner Schenk.
Commissioner Schenk, but before you go, Commissioner Schenk, I just want to, because I don't want to lose this point as well. Commissioner Machewski, and rightfully so, has been challenging me and my team to think differently about our infrastructure, our built environment. So as I said earlier, our infrastructure is largely built around our urban cores. I don't know if that service delivery model makes sense in today's terms. And as I think about the more rural areas of our county and how we deliver services, we've always talked about meeting folks where they're at. I think that implies that we're going to shift our thinking around how we deliver those services. That shift requires us to think differently about our operating model and how we fund that work. So again, as we start to think and start to roll out the space plan work, as we start to roll out a new or updated service delivery model, when we layer the environment that we operate in now, more of this hybrid environment, we have to think through those things and think through the resources that we've allocated. So again, I'm looking directly at you, Commissioner Machewski. That is not lost on us. There's a lot of internal discussions happening around that. I think that's one of the big things that this board is going to have to decide, how to right size our infrastructure portfolio, how to deliver services in a manner that meets our residents where they're at. Whether you're west of Z Road or east of US 23, there's a clear expectation that we shift our service delivery model so that folks have the resources that they need in a timely and effective manner.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner Schenk.
Thank you, Chair. There are two things I want to, well, one's a question, one's a statement. One, for people who are watching this, I want to make sure that everybody knows we're doing something a little different here. We are starting our budget conversations earlier in the year than we usually do. And we're going to go deeper and more creatively than we have done sometimes in the past. I guess I'm hearing a lot of questions and a lot of why don't you do this differently? And I just wanted to make it clear that you are not necessarily coming with a finished product, and we're going to be talking about this a lot. And I'm excited about us talking about the budget in detail in ways that we tend not to. I mean, we do around specific subjects, but not necessarily the budget as a whole. And then also trying to find new ways to talk about the budget with constituents, because the budget doesn't need to be an opaque thing. But I know when I go through a budget, it will often take an intense amount of focus for me to understand where that's going. So that leads me to my question. I'll go back and say, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I'm really excited about it, especially since we're planning for the next 4 years this year. My question is, and this is because of some questions I've gotten from constituents, when we talk about the public safety budget, we've talked about how some of the money goes to providing services for our townships. As our sheriff's office has begun to engage more with community mental health and work with some other aspects of what we might call human services, I think that in some ways that budget is becoming less clear, where before we could think maybe the sheriff's office is just spending money on like law enforcement. It's become much more complex. And I know that we can look to the CMH budget and see what that says. Is there another way to parse out what for our information and to talk about it with the community, where the sheriff's office is spending money on what we might consider more human services or even mental health services, and then where it's more directly what we would consider law enforcement?
So a couple of great points. I gleaned a couple of things out of there. Back when I first became the administrator, there was a lot of dialogue about the intersection between the work of the sheriff's office and community mental health. We have operated in that space. I think both units, the community mental health office and the sheriff's office, have worked hard to make sure that there is the appropriate intersection and that we're delivering services in a very different way. Think about the community policing model. I think about some of the changes that Director Cortez has implemented with community mental health. To me, that implies that our budget is going to go along or walk alongside of those changes. So historically in government, and certainly even in Washtenaw County, even though I feel like we're one of the more progressive counties, we tend to think of our budget as this static document. It isn't. It's an organic, it should be an organic document. And then and only then are we able to respond in the manner that is most appropriate. Long-winded way of saying I clearly understand and I accept the challenge that I've heard this evening to present this information in a different way, present it in a way that makes sense not only to you all, but the community that's trying to listen alongside of us. These are, at the end of the day, these are their tax dollars. And I want to be able to present to them a budget that not only they can understand, but they can either get behind or recommend to us changes or modifications that make sense for us. We can talk about our service delivery model all day long. At the end of the day, we've heard it a lot as we've moved through this pandemic. There are some in our community that feel left out of this process. And until we can effectively answer that question, we will always be a unit that is excluding parts of our community. And I just don't want that, and I don't want to leave that legacy behind as I close out my career. I don't want to leave that legacy in Washtenaw County. We are an affluent county with resources to do anything that we want to do. So we need to be about the business of making sure that we're meeting everyone in this community where they're at and they have the tools and resources.
Oh, you got another one.
Well, I just want to say thank you for those comments, and just want to say to my fellow commissioners and everybody that I'm really excited about these conversations that we're having, and I'm excited about this journey that we're on to make our budget more accessible to our residents, and then to take their input back and make changes in the budget as appropriate.
A lot of excitement around the budget. This is good. All right, do we have any other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay.
If not, Chair, I'll just close with this last statement. At the end of the day, the budget is your document. The way we present this information is should be consistent with your expectations. And the challenge that I've heard this evening, the challenge that I've quite honestly heard over the last few years is how can we migrate to a document that meets the needs of the 9 of you? The resources that we allocate to this community are driven by the 9 of you. And I want to make sure that the documents and the supporting information necessary to produce good government in Washtenaw County are effectively and appropriately communicated to you all. So we've heard a lot today. We've taken a lot of notes. We'll come back. We'll be better prepared for a different kind of conversation at the next meeting. There are some deliverables that we'll work to provide for you at the next time that we're able to get together. And thank you for listening this evening. I know that's a lot. I didn't anticipate this being as long of a discussion as we've had this evening, but thank you guys for the very thoughtful questions.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I feel like we hit all the objectives, and I'm particularly interested in seeing how Commissioner Labar's idea pans out. I think that would be a really interesting way for us to move forward. Okay, we are going to move ahead to liaison reports. Does anybody want to give a liaison report? There's also a liaison report next meeting too. But it's on here. Commissioner Schenk, I see you.
Thank you. This is a little bit of a lighthearted liaison report. I'm the liaison, one of the liaisons, along with Commissioner Sanders, to the Washtenaw County Road Commission. And the Director of Operations let us know that he thinks spring is right around the corner. He can tell because the roads are close to buckling in some places, and that we shouldn't expect too much more cold or snow. So I say that's about as good of an indicator of spring as we sometimes see out in the rural areas. And they are doing their best to maintain the roads, but there's not a lot that they can do about the freeze thaw cycle.
Well, that sounds like a better indicator than the groundhog map.
I wanted to say that, but I thought it was maybe too silly. So I'm glad you did.
I see. Okay. Any others? Commissioner Scott.
I might as well give liaison reports now rather than keeping us longer later. Also, the skunks are out in full force, which is a sign as well. I have 2 liaison reports, one from the Board of Health. We had a great presentation on Friday at the Board of Health from our medical examiner, Dr. Alicia Wilson. It riveted all of us in a way I don't think we would ever have thought that we would be riveted by the medical examiner, but it was a great presentation. We also heard from Community Voices in Health for all about an exciting translator program. They're looking for grants right now, and they're working to try to create real in-person translator services for people in the county, I think for Spanish, Chinese, and looking especially for Arabic, with some recognition that we have resettled 300 Afghan families here in Washtenaw County and want them to feel welcome if they're getting county services. They are looking for those grants, but it may be something that we want to consider as a board, putting some money toward that program at some point. Let's see, we did some review of COVID numbers, and it was a very successful hybrid meeting. The other liaison report I'll bring to you is from the Board of Public Works. We looked at cleanup day, past successes, and future dates. I will tell you that in 2021, we processed 503,546 pounds of material, including 93,000 plus pounds of tires. At our county cleanup days, the participation was up from 2020. I would expect we'd see more in 2022. And one of the really successful things we saw was a great success in having county cleanup for agricultural tires. That this is a thing that people on farms really struggle with, what to do with those old agricultural tires, and those events are really welcome, and we'll probably see more of them in the future. They're always looking for volunteers. I think we should all go out as a board one day and volunteer at one of those cleanup days. I think that would be fun and team building, and that's it. Thanks.
Thanks for mentioning the success of the hybrid Board of Health meeting. I mean, it's really impressive how much time staff are putting into making those accessible too for people that can't come in. Good. Any others? Not seeing any. Okay, moving on to items for current and future discussion. Ooh, that was quick. I'm gonna give it to Commissioner Schenk. It's a little quicker on the draw there.
Thank you. This is important. I actually wrote it on my hand to show myself that I needed to remember. I received a letter from Trilby McDonald, who is the chair of LPAC, about a program called Land Link. And the Washtenaw County Conservation District is applying for a grant. And they want to take over and expand a program that Ottawa County has been running that links people who own land with people who want to farm land, and so they need it. And so it's a very important program. It's something that has really been needed for many, many years. And so I'm not asking you to vote on it today, or not, I am asking you to vote on it today. I'm not asking you to vote on it at this meeting. I sent you an email about it, just forwarded Trilby's email. And then I'm going to ask us to vote on it as a resolution to authorize me to sign that letter on behalf of the entire board. I think that will really help them get the grant. I am the liaison to LPAC. We voted to support that. And I believe there are a few entities around the county that are doing it. It's going to make, I think, a huge difference in new farmers being able to get on land, and then people who are transitioning away from farming, who need to sell their land, finding somebody to buy it who will steward it for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that former commissioner, now state representative Felicia Burbeck joined us tonight. And just wanted to thank her for being with us. And it's just nice to see her in this room again. Thanks.
Have any other items for current or future discussion? Not seeing any. Okay, I wanted to throw out a quick one. So there was another shooting in my neighborhood not that long ago on my street. It was actually a few doors down several days ago. And we got woke up in the middle of the night by deputies. And I just want to take a moment to thank the deputies that responded. I met many of them since this is an ongoing issue, which is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about violence interruption being part of the community priority fund that we're going to be voting on in the main meeting. It's certainly a tough job, and I do want to thank Deputies Roy and Heilebuck for their response that night. So it's cool. Pending items. Any pending items? None. Now I'd be looking for someone to move to adjourn. Second. Good. All right. All in favor? All right. We're adjourned. We will be back at 7 o'clock.
call the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Mr. Okay, can you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Beaman,
Present.
Commissioner Hodge,
Present.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Here.
Commissioner Labar,
Present.
Commissioner Machieski,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
Present.
Commissioner Sanders,
Present.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have public participation. We welcome public participation. If you wish to speak, please approach the microphone. Everybody has 3 minutes. Please state your name and address if you would do so, please.
Director with Advisa Home Healthcare and Hospice. You want my address?
No, no, no.
Oh, I thought you
just
said
the-
address.
The
I'm sorry.
general, please.
It's been a long day.
Because we have 9 commissioners and then sometimes people want to know, but I don't want to take your time.
Gotcha. I'm here today. I know I spoke for a minute earlier about auto no fault reform. I think the big thing is there were a couple different ways for us to get paid under this reform. The one being under the service codes with Medicare, that we were paid up to 200% of those. If you had a charge description master in 2019, which we did, and we've submitted that to all of the insurance companies. If you did not have that, you were taken to that 55%, correct? Well, even though we've shown them our charge description, they only pay us at the 55%. They won't recognize it. They said, well, why didn't you use this before? No one asked for it before. We're in Arizona, Washington State, and Nevada, where we did need to have it. So thought we were fortunate enough to have already had it to help. Unfortunately, we are paid at that $14 to $18 an hour. And there's quite a few that we are not getting paid on at all. We've started doing our collections at the branch level because there's so much that we're trying to collect to keep people on our caseload, keep them at home where they can be taken care of in the comfort of their home. It kind of goes back to that old aging in place, right? You want to be at home. You don't want to be in an institution. Unfortunately, over 40 home healthcare companies have either gone out of business since July 1st of 2021, or they no longer accept the catastrophic auto patients. We were fortunate enough to be able to assume some of those clients, but I can tell you right now, I get phone calls daily with people that want us to take care of their loved ones at home. And I'm a respiratory therapist at heart, and I'm very passionate about my babies on vents and taking care of my people. And I have to say no. And it's devastating. I go home at night and there's not enough wine. So we want to reform this. The myth is if we do that, it takes us back to that old unregulated forum, right? That is not true. There is utilization review that is in place now. We're okay with that. We were okay with the reform. We're not okay with not being reimbursed for the care and being able to keep people at home. We went to a memorial in Lansing, I believe it was yesterday, it could have been the day before, for people that have been affected since this law went into place. And 2 of them were clients that we had taken over and they had to go back into the hospital for whatever reason in that area. They weren't even 7 days in the hospital and they pass away, or the nursing home. Their care is such high acuity.
Thank you. Your time is up. If you
Okay.
could leave your information with Mr. DeLu, then we can follow up with you.
Of course.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Felicia Brayback. I am in Pittsfield Township. Commissioner Sanders is my amazing commissioner, so thank you for your service and thanks to all of you for your service. I just wanted to add some additional comments to what Ms. Brown was talking about
auto no fault has impacted our residents here in the state at an alarming and catastrophic rate. Since the changes have come into fruition, and Ms. Brown was talking about the schedule of fees that has been shifted and changed, and the impact that that has had on our residents has been so incredibly detrimental. I literally spoke with a family, and it was suggested, because they couldn't be taken care of here, that they move their brother to Florida for that care. That is outrageous, that that's the expectation for families, that they have to move their loved ones away from their care, their support systems, and that we want to do this here in Michigan is unfathomable to me. So I'm here asking all of you if you would be willing to do a resolution in support of changing what we have now on the books. Whether that's, there are lots of ways to do it, whether that's returning to what we had. Ms. Brown was talking about that. There's a new bill, our fellow commissioner, but now State Rep Robbie has a bill that he will be dropping in the next couple of weeks to return to what the standard of care was prior to the current iteration. And so I just want to encourage all of you to strongly consider that. I'd ask for your support in that. The residents of Michigan deserve better from all of us. And I'm sorry that we at the state could not get this done for all of our residents, because we should have. And we should all be ashamed that we couldn't get it done. So I'm here asking for your help. And again, I'm grateful to all of you for all of your service, and it's so good to see all of you. So thank you all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a public comment? Okay, if there are no more people here, oh, I'm sorry. I'm always torn between being efficient and waiting long enough.
That's okay. My name is Melissa Adams. I'm a resident of Ypsilanti Township. I've never spoken in any kind of form like this before. I have a daughter that is with the mental health, Washtenaw Community Mental Health. I just had a couple questions. And one is, we did a millage a few years ago, and there wasn't enough therapists in Washtenaw Community Mental Health. And we raised a millage, and I thought that I was voting for millage money to go to my child to get therapy, because they were short therapists at Washtenaw Community Mental Health for the contracts and the individual treatment plans for the mental health. And I want to know how you guys, or how Washtenaw County is getting the money for more therapists to fill those positions if the millage money is not going to the existing patients at Washtenaw Community Mental Health. It's only going for the crisis line and the new services, not the pre-existing patients that are already there lacking the services. Also, I wanted to know the 24-hour crisis line. During the snow days, they were closed because Washtenaw County was closed. And when you called the 24-hour service line, they told us we needed to call back there on Monday to get medicine for children or for adults that needed services. I needed to know what essential workers are during a pandemic for mental health. If it's a crisis line and we're calling for medicine, we can't wait 4 days for medicine on Monday because they're out on Wednesday because it's a snow day. So I need to know if it's a crisis line and they're available 24 hours, I need to know why I have to call back on Monday morning to get meds. Also, I wanted to bring up, if people are being denied services through this crisis line, what are, because in the news it said that nobody will be denied services regardless of their insurance for mental health. And we are during a pandemic. The mental health right now is a crisis. I want to know what happens when they go through the access and they are denied and they're requesting services. Like who's helping the ones that are being denied services because they don't qualify through the guidelines through the state of Michigan, through the access line. So I had three questions. that are very important because the millage is coming up again, I'm sure, or we need more money for mental health. And that is a big thing right now during the pandemic.
Thank you. Your time is up. If you can leave your contact information with Mr. DeLu, we'll make sure we follow up on your question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for public comment here?
Thank you, and I'm glad we have 3 minutes. My name is Brenda from Ypsilanti Township, Brenda Stumbo, Ypsilanti Township. I would request that you change the 1-minute rule from the previous meeting to at least 2 minutes. That's just a personal request. I want to state that 87 homes in Ypsi Township in the city of Ypsilanti flooded during the Great Flood 2 or 3 years ago. And I know that the Drain Commissioner and our Water Resource Commissioner and the Road Commission, I believe, has requested some sort of matching grants or something for flooded areas. And I just want to let you know that it was a reality in our communities and request that you consider that from Washtenaw County Water Resource Commissioner Evan Pratt. And I also want to let you know that we partnered with the County Drain Commission on vermin treatments, and it's $150,000 that we allocated in our budget to partner with, which are AKA rats. We partnered with Washtenaw County 3 years ago, and we've continued with that pilot that we did with the county. So thank you for doing that. And we just want you to know that we're continuing to do that. We also contribute to the animal control contract to help with the Humane Society costs. And we have a community organizer with Habitat that works with a lot of the county services too, to connect people with resources that we have. And that was kind of a suggestion that I just wanted to mention. I think if we had more community connectors and bring it to them, or have a place where they don't have to have an appointment, they don't have to go on the computer, and just come in and sit and say, these are my challenges. How can we connect them? You know, and I just want to suggest that and try to work with the county and possibly doing that to help people in the greatest need with the resources. Because there are a lot of resources and we're blessed in Washtenaw County, but getting them connected is a challenge. And so I have learned this by going door to door as well, handing out masks in Ypsi Township. And we have distributed almost 100,000 masks door to door, and people are just so appreciative that we actually are giving something instead of having them come to us. And sidewalks are underwater. There's no curb and gutter with the climate change and the investments. I'm just gonna throw that out there as a possible investment as well to help with the flooding in the areas that do not have curb and gutter. And let's get people healthy and happy and walking as much as we can in our county.
Supervisor Stumbo. I'd be glad to follow up with you also. Anyone else?
Chair, if there are no other comments in the room, we do have 2 virtual comments.
Okay, thank you. The rules are the same for the virtual comments. Please just say who you are and where you're calling from, and then also 3 minutes, and thank you for making those comments.
First up is Glenn Nelson.
I'm Glenn Nelson, one of the leaders of Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety. I will make 3 points. First, we have a major problem in Washtenaw County. Children and youth are suffering greatly as a result of the pandemic and associated stresses. A study of mental health services in Washtenaw County, released in November 2021, concluded the most substantial persistent gaps in behavioral health services are in services for youth, including substance use, harm reduction services, residential services, and targeted programming for at-risk subpopulations. Second, we should be proud of the responses of our local governmental bodies, schools, medical centers, nonprofits, and others in responding to this crisis. I am sure you are aware of these efforts, so I will not use my time to go into details. Third, we could do even better if there existed leadership across these multiple hardworking, dedicated institutions on some projects. For example, everyone I talked with agrees a youth assessment center would be a good thing, somewhat analogous to the Center for Adults at 750 Towner. Everyone also says that to be most effective, the center should be a collaborative effort of schools, CMH, juvenile justice, nonprofits serving children and youth, our outstanding hospital systems, parents and youth from our most at-risk communities, and others. At this point, no one institution has seen fit to assume the leadership required for a successful conclusion. To use an analogy, it is as if 12 wonderful people have responded to the call for building a house. Each is working independently on a part of the house, one on windows, another on plumbing, and so on. But without a leader who coordinates their efforts, the house never gets built. I urge you to provide leadership in youth services for the Youth Assessment Center and perhaps other such projects. Because you are very good at this, I leave it to you to decide whether the measure is charging a county department to provide leadership or convening an intense 1 or 2 day workshop of potential participants, or establishing a commission to report back in, say, 6 months, or hiring someone on a short-term contract to study our situation and recommend a path forward or some other action. I do urge you to do something. Our children and youth need help, and they need it soon. Thank you for this opportunity.
Next up is Harvey Summers.
Go ahead, Mr. Summers.
Sorry. My name is Harvey Summers, a resident of Scioto Township, so I belong to Jason Masczewski. Hi, Jason. I'm here because I'm deeply convinced that our county needs more resources devoted to restorative justice. I'm here because I support the Washtenaw County Restorative Justice Center proposed by the Friends of Restorative Justice and the Dispute Resolution Center. This is simply an issue of equity. We know that the poor, minority, and marginalized in our community are disproportionately harmed by the current criminal legal system. We also know that the purpose of restorative justice is to provide a proven process for people to resolve the traumas of conflict and crime in a way that empowers them, heals them, and restores stability in our community. Diversion from the current criminal justice system is already underway in this county. It's moving from, our county is moving from punishing to restoring, and this should be supported. The prosecutor's office is using deflection. Our courts are referring cases for restorative justice. The sheriff's office has implemented its law enforcement assisted diversion and deflection, its lead pilot program this past October, and I understand the Ann Arbor City Police Department is sending cases to the Dispute Resolution Center. The DRC has been a key resource for our community since 1983. Now it needs more resources. The Friends of Restorative Justice and the DRC have worked together on a proposal for a Washtenaw County Restorative Justice Center to be operated by the DRC. In December, they sent you the proposal along with the budget for the center's startup costs. We're asking the county to fund or help fund this proposal. You have the plan, you have the estimated costs, and there clearly is a need for more restorative services. We're asking for your focus and your decision. Having the DRC within the jail court complex has worked well for many years, but the new Restorative Justice Center needs to be located separately from the jail court complex. Let's find county space that the community will perceive as a more neutral ground. It's time for you to help institute a Restorative Justice Center for our county, and I thank you.
Thank you.
There is one more virtual hand from John Gourlay.
Go ahead, Mr. Gorley.
Thank you. My name is John Gorley. I live in Lima Township, and that makes me, like Harvey, who spoke just a minute ago, a constituent of Jason Maciejewski's. I'm also a member of Friends of Restorative Justice, Forge, and I also want you to consider how to support the county's need for restorative justice. You have the proposal. It might help to explain what restorative justice is. It's best understood by comparing it to our traditional legal system. The criminal legal system operates by asking three questions. What law was broken? Who broke the law? And what punishment do they deserve? No attention is given to what the harmed person needs. In restorative justice, we ask different questions. Who was harmed? What are their needs? Whose responsibility is it to meet those needs? And how is that person going to do it? I think you can see how this process can help heal the harms caused by crime better than our traditional retributive justice system. Forge got started when a couple who had moved from Indiana to Ann Arbor had their house broken into. They asked for restorative justice, which had been available to them in Indiana, but were told that it wasn't available in Washtenaw County. Why not Washtenaw County? A group of citizens coalesced as Forge to study the issue, and we found that restorative justice was used with great success in many places. The state of Vermont, Brooklyn, New York, Washington, D.C., Oakland, California, and many other places in and outside the United States. We engaged in advocacy and education, and we can take some credit for opening the door to restorative justice in the prosecutor's office and in the courts. What remains now to do is to create a safe space, as Harvey said, to house and facilitate restorative justice coming from all sources in the county. So I'd like you to consider the proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no more hands in the Zoom call.
Thank you. Now we'll move to item 4, Commissioner follow-up to public participation. Commissioners, Mr. Labar.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry. I had made some notes that I was going to say later in the agenda when we talked about the CMH items, but I think the public comment, several of them merit just saying it now. One, to answer the question around psychiatrists, staff shortages and staff availability have continued to be a challenge for CMH for a number of reasons, one of which is just simply the competition we have with other nonprofit sector folks and certainly folks in the private sector. So we're operating at sort of a disadvantage there. We continue to try and recruit the brightest and best. State Representative Braybeck can attest to that from her time on the CMH board. It is an ongoing challenge. There's always somebody available for the 24/7 crisis line. What I don't know and what would need to be known is, one, what was the specific of the service requested? And two, would the individual accept the service that CMH could offer? I don't know those things, but we can look further into it. In terms of the millage, this millage is going to bring in $6.5 million to CMH in the coming fiscal year. What I think will get lost is 2 years ago, we were at a position where, because of a delay or an undercommitment in terms of state and federal funding, we couldn't budget as a CMH because the feds and the state weren't coming in with what they said they would come in with as flexible as they would say, and here's the kicker, how much. So in those 24 months, the CMH staff has, one, advocated for increased pay for direct care workers. They're not alone in that, but I can guarantee you they helped lead that charge. Two, they have applied for and been selected into 2 programs, the SAMHSA grant and the CCVHC grant, which they got in with Kentucky here. The reason I'm going on about this is because they've leveraged that $6.5 million into an additional $16 million, 16.9 if you look at the resolution tonight, that's made possible by that. With all that leveraging, with all that work, we still have some of the challenges that were highlighted by the comments here tonight. We had a hiring freeze in place until last year, and we also cut some administrative staff in 2019. Those things will take time to get back up. I do believe that CMH staff will be beginning services or beginning efforts around a youth assessment center in April, and they'll be doing that with millage dollars, so they have the flexibility to do that. The 9 of us, I think, should plan to programmatically fund it in this budget and budgets going forward, although we do have to decide where's it located, who's involved, and as Mr. Nelson said, you know, who is building what part of the house. All this to say, I think CMH is doing a tremendous job, but the environment they operate in, 1, short of resources and staff, short of talented people who are willing to do this work, and 2, a growth in terms of how much need is out there. In the last 2 years with millage dollars, we've provided services for 1,400 people. We've provided 30,000 individual services, mental health services, with millage dollars and those grants. There's more to go, there's more to do, and we don't have enough hands on deck. So tonight is progress, and you're going to see progress in the next month or so in terms of attraction and retention. All those things are important, but more to go. But I will say this, and then I'll end my soliloquy, forgive me. An investment in Washtenaw County CMH right now is one of the best investments you can make in any public dollars, I would argue, in any CMH or equivalent in the country, because of that record they've shown with innovation. So I offer those as my thoughts and feedback. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner LeBar. Commissioner Sanders.
I'm going to try not to take as long as Commissioner LeBar. I want to say that I appreciate the fact that State Representative Braybeck came to talk to us about, you know, the no-fault insurance. I think that during the process of switching that over or giving people an option, quote unquote, was very poorly coordinated. It was very difficult for people to understand the difference, especially having an elderly parent that I have had to walk through what that process looks like, and decided to pay the higher premium because you can never underestimate the cost of a bad accident in terms of your medical care, and you don't want to gamble with something like that. So I support that. In terms of the low reimbursement for in-home care, again, I have personal experience. I had a father that passed away last year, and we started with the in-home care. It is very costly, and if you do not have medical coverage, it's something that can be more than a burden on the family. And considering the reimbursement that you receive, we then have to think about, if they receive $14 to $18 per hour only, what on earth are we paying the workers? Because there's an administrative cost that goes there. And so I've said this before at previous meetings, when it came to offering, you know, sort of exemptions to some of our providers, that I don't know how on earth we think that we can pay somebody $10 or $11 to go in and care and love and take care of and not abuse our family members that are no longer able to take care of themselves, or in many cases, speak up for themselves. So I'm going 2 for 2. I'm supporting both. And then I wanted to thank Supervisor Stumbo, because the last 2 meetings she's come and talked to us about concerns that she's had, as well as brought up, you know, reminding us what we already know, that there are equity disparities here in the county. But as a result of that, I reached out and I had a Barrier Busters training set up that I completed yesterday. And I asked for information about what municipalities are paying into that process and what are the percentages of the residents and what municipalities they live in that are utilizing that service. And I was a little dismayed that we've got, I'm told 48% of the users of Barrier Busters reside in Ypsilanti Township, yet Ypsilanti Township pays nothing into the Barrier Busters budget. That is of concern to me. And as I took notes, you know, of course, we should take care of vermin. We should take care of animal control. But I'm hoping that we're not putting, so vermin, first of all, is a public health issue. But I would hope that we care a little bit more for our residents than maybe we do about animal control. And we are making sure that municipalities, plural, are anteing up to assist the residents that are utilizing the services. Because I don't think it's okay to continue to sort of try and vilify the county for what we are not doing if this is a singular effort. So I've asked for more data on that, and I will be doing some more exploration on that, because I think the residents also need to be aware, they need to know, you know, kind of put your money where your mouth is. And so I wanted to share that because it's not okay, I think, to have sound bites that make us look like we don't care about our residents. This is a group effort. This is a family, and the residents, if I use it as an example, they all belong to us. And so it's not okay for us to expect that only one member of the family is responsible for the welfare of the family. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I think Supervisor Stumbo is gone, but I did want to comment on a similar topic to what Commissioner Sanders was talking about. I think our Barrier Busters program is one of our best programs that is underutilized because people don't know how to access it. I put up a budget amendment last year to have us increase funding for that program and to add staffing to that program. I still hope we will do that. I think we need to significantly increase the size of that program, and I think we need to add staffing to it so that we can help people navigate the wonderful community and social safety net programs that we have throughout Washtenaw County, both those that we provide, as well as those that are provided by the state and federal government. I really hope we will actually do that at some point, because I think that is kind of, when I heard Supervisor Stumbo's comments, what I heard was essentially what we're talking about with Barrier Busters. Helping people navigate and access these programs that are available. So I really, really, really hope that we will do that. And I know that's something we've talked about already, but I just want to keep harping on it until we do it, or until I'm gone, one way or the other, but I'll just keep talking about it. The other thing I wanted to mention, particularly to Mr. Nelson's comments earlier, with the Youth Commission, has been doing phenomenal work looking at issues of concern to young people in our county. I attended their meeting on Sunday, just a few days ago, and one of their biggest concerns is mental health among our youth. And so I think Mr. Nelson makes some really good comments about how do we coordinate that effort with our schools, with the community at large. And I was glad that Commissioner LaBarre shared some of that work that's happening at CMH. I don't get the ins and outs of that, not being on the CMH board, but I do know that there is a lot of really good work happening. So maybe that's something we can follow up with our CMH director on, to say, hey, can we get some information out there to the community on what is happening around youth mental health? And then perhaps if needed, which I assume it may still be needed, figure out how we have those conversations with the schools themselves to support our young people. I will tell you, as a teacher at WCC, young people are struggling. My students are struggling, and when they don't show up to class, sometimes it's worse than it has ever been. Some of the stories that I hear from my students and the mental health challenges that they're facing. you can only do so much as an instructor to help them get through that. But I can't share any of those stories, but I will just tell you from it bringing tears to my eyes that it is really, really hard for our young people. So I do want to see what more we can do in that area. I was really encouraged to hear that the Youth Commission is working on how do they engage in that work and have discussions around youth mental health in the community as well. So I know we do have some good partners there to help us understand that perspective better. I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention, as we're talking about auto no fault at this meeting, at the last meeting, we did have a resolution ready to support going back to auto no fault. We pulled that from the last agenda. I think it's still sitting and waiting. So we're ready to go to consider that as a board. I have no magic 8-ball as much as I would like one to tell you how the board will vote, but I know that probably the will is there for this board to support something like that. I just want to note we did increase the budget to barrier busters. And I am fully in support of increasing that budget more should we need it, but we didn't leave them totally high and dry. All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Hodge?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to jump on the Barrier Busters bandwagon too, since we're all talking about it. So we did do that increase, but Barrier Busters has already used their funding for the quarter already. So we do need to have some more conversations about how we go about supporting that program. I think one of the great things that we could do is partner with some of the municipalities that might have some interest in using their American Rescue Plan dollars to put that funding into Barrier Busters, since it's there. We share our residents with municipalities across the county. I was going to say this for liaison reports with Statutory Drain Board, but we are already having conversations with the Water Resources Commissioner about doing some sort of match sort of program. I expect that we would see a proposal about that sometime soon, perhaps as part of the next ARPA package. So that's something that we're looking forward to. And I think between that and a potential partnership with Barrier Busters, we're looking at two really good potential options for being able to partner with municipalities to better serve all of our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodge. Commissioner Machewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first want to note and thank Mr. Gorley and Mr. Summers for their comments tonight from Forge, and appreciate their continued conversation and commitment to the issue. I also want to join in the comments about CMH, add the aging services side to this, and note how critical the direct care workforce shortage is at this point. That there's a desperate need for a long-term plan for direct care workers in the state. We are short 36,000 of them at this time. And I hope as a board that at some point this spring we will support the state making permanent a direct care wage increase. A large part of this is due to the Medicaid system and the fact that we need to put more money as a state into the Medicaid system to provide the rates that can hire the workers, pay them a wage that people will want to choose to work at CMH, want to choose to work at the Area Agency on Aging. Is a very competitive environment, has been noted earlier. But we need the policies in Medicaid to reflect the need that is existing in the system right now. So I very much appreciate the comments of my colleagues earlier on this topic as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Machewski. Commissioner Jefferson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank those who have come to speak to us again about issues within our county. There is a ask from members of the community, 2 consecutive meetings to deal with a restorative justice and dispute resolution center. And I asked our administrator today, we need to find a way to respond to that request because as it was spoken last week, all they're looking for is an answer so they know how to move forward, whether we're going to help them with the building or not. We'll give them an idea on what they can do next. So I'm suggesting that to our administrator to get with them, to give them an answer. So it's been 2 months, 2 meetings that this has been discussed, and nothing has happened. We appreciate all of that because that restorative justice is what's going on now. And, you know, as we change as a country, as a county, and as our communities become more and more engaged in what's going on with the violence with our youth, we do need to have some type of center that is supportive of the needs that are growing in that area. Also the supervisor, things that supervisor brought up as far as working with agencies such as Habitat for Humanity and putting resources to deal with residents so they can have wraparound services and be given those type of that type of help from the township. Also working, as I know, with Michigan Works and things like that. I mean, we pay taxes in Ypsilanti Township, and the question of whether or not municipalities can provide any funding assistance to help our residents within our county, area busters, or other agencies and opportunities that we have here at the county is one that should be taken to a table in which they all should be gathered and have a conversation about it. That is something that I know will be a conversation that will open up if there are reasons why things are the way they are, whether or not Ypsilanti Township, in which I reside, is receiving 48% of that. That we have to understand the economy in Eastern County has really been devastated by the removal of the auto industry. And with that move, the dollars that used to come in, tax revenue, have fallen a lot more than we can imagine. So we need to know if we're going to ask for something, what they're holding in their coffers. So I believe that what the township does for our residents is reach out to them and give them answers. They respond to questions, they respond to issues, they respond to crime-related issues or violence, those type of things. Thank Melissa Adams for coming tonight. She has been one of those parents who struggled even before COVID. And as Mr. LeBar said, there are some things in line at community mental health, in which I'm on the board, that will be bringing some more things. But as my colleague, Commissioner Machowski mentioned, the devastation of the dollars that were taken out of our coffers because of the state holding back on dollars for years now, 6 years ago. And so that is given a hard time for our public health and our community health departments to be able to retain and to recruit workers with the competition that is happening out here. With COVID hitting, it gave people a lot of opportunities to rethink their careers and relook at what type of job they wanted to be a part of, and most of all, look at their income to see what their lifestyle of living could be. And so we have to find ways to readjust to those defunding type of things that happen from the state level. We definitely having a hard time competing, but CMH is doing what they can to find ways to recruit people innovatively. Lately, they have connected to an organization that is helping them recruit more. As far as the millage dollars and the inability to mingle with the Medicare dollars, that is something that was not publicly known before the millage was passed. And so I think we need to make an effort to get more clarity out to the community about the expectations of those millage dollars and what the reality is of what they can be used for. And then that way, maybe we will be able to give parents of children and adult children who need services an idea of what is really out there for them as far as this money goes. So with the, I guess the county being the safety net of this county and of the people, we are able to deal with situations such as the cry that came out from residents over 3 years ago about vermin. Once the pipeline was put in over off of Wyatt Road, it scattered vermin into the communities. And residents were seeing vermin in the daytime crossing the street. And so there was an infestation that was so bad that as I was asked to join those who are in the township at meetings to listen to these residents, it became clear that there was something that we needed to have our drain commission do, and what it is that we could do as far as making sure that residents felt safe in their homes and that their animals were not bothered by these vermin. And so, yes, we did partner with the township and had a successful run on removing some of that infestation. And as she said, the township is now spending their own money to help residents, which is a resident issue, to deal with the vermin issue that is still there. Now, that is something that we have an opportunity as a county board to do, is to collaborate respectfully and make sure that we are definitely opening our ears to what the concerns are with each municipality when we are asking them to look at what they can do to help residents even more through county processes and county programs or services. So Barrier Busters is one of the things that I knew and spoke of many times, was running out of money and needed more funding in it. And we have done a little bit of that funding. If we can find ways to do more, that would be fine too. But I'm definitely wanting to deal with the resolution center question and making sure we give them a response. That is very important to me right now. So let's just try to deal with the needs of our residents that have been exacerbated and have been, just really exposed through COVID, and the expense that it takes has risen. So therefore, we can do this with the best ability that we can. Talked about our budget today, and trying to find ways to be more efficient in that, so we can find better ways in dealing with our constituents who are in those low opportunity and very low opportunity index, which is basically 197, 198, very low. So let's just make this a opportunity to talk to our municipalities about what it is that we need from them and what it is that they can actually do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just want to echo my fellow commissioners and thanking everyone for coming in person, speaking online. I haven't heard anything addressed tonight that I couldn't back or get excited about. So I just want to thank you for your participation and moving forward on these issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaman. Any other comments? Okay, I just want to say, yes, I will echo Commissioner Beaman and in thanking my colleagues for your detailed discussion of the items that the members of the public brought forward tonight. And I want to thank everybody who has come to speak, and also everybody who has come and just is sitting in the audience because you care about what's going on here tonight. It's really important to us to have that kind of connection, even when it's a very formal, kind of awkward situation, when you have all 9 of us sitting around here at the board. We really value your comments and we really value your care. So with that, we will move on to liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? Commissioner Machewski?
Thank you. I wasn't ready with this at working session, but I am now. I just wanted to note that last week, Commissioner Schenk and Commissioner Morgan and I were at SUMCOG's Executive Committee meeting, where we had the chance to approve the Broadband in Southeast Michigan report, which is a report that was created by a broadband task force at SUMCOG. A couple of Washtenaw County projects were highlighted in this report. There were about a half a dozen people from the county that participated on this task force. And I will say that we've seen some of my discussions with staff at SUMCOG. We've been recognized and held up as a model for how to do broadband, and are beginning to get the attention for the action that this body took last year. And I'm excited to see the work begin potentially later this year. So I just wanted to note that in my report, as well as the Commission on Aging continues to do their work in identifying needs and looks forward to coming before this body and offering comment in the near future about some of their findings and potentially recommendations when it comes to aging services. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Machewski. Any other liaison reports? Okay, with that, we'll move on to a special order of business. I am looking for a motion on a resolution. Did I miss something? Okay, looking for a motion on a resolution setting a public hearing for Wednesday, March 16th, 2022 at 7:00 PM in the boardroom at 220 North Main Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and to be accessible remotely through Zoom.
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, we will need a roll call vote, please, Mr. McKay.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. I am going to pull item number 6, report of the treasurer, out of the consent agenda, and we'll have that in a future meeting. With that, I'm looking for a motion to move the consent agenda, please. So moved.
Support.
Any discussion or anybody want to pull anything out separately? Okay, we can take that on a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against, please say nay. Motion carries. Next, we have item 9, resolutions. For someone to move those. Commissioner Lavar?
Here. Start with the first reading, the 1A resolution from the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, or forgive me, accepting the grant from them. B is the CMH 21-22 budget amendment. Sorry, I'm scrolling and my computer is both old and that's a long amendment. C is you've pulled the resolution from the treasurer's office. So D, which is the accommodation sunsetting the economic development coordinating committee. Now 2 for final reading. We have A, the acceptance of the weatherization assistance program. Commissioner Machewski just told me I screwed up and I apologize. Our new format confused me and I'll stop at the first readings.
Looking for a second? All right, does anybody want to pull anything for separate consideration? Okay.
If we're going to go through and discuss, maybe I don't need to pull it for separate consideration, but I have a number of questions around the CMH budget.
Okay. Pull that for
So
separate
I would like to pull
consideration.
that one.
Anything else? Okay, any discussion? Okay, I do want to say something about the Resolution A, the resolution accepting a grant from the Ann Arbor Community Foundation in the amount of $15,000 for the Sure Moms program with the Sheriff's Office. I had the pleasure of spending an evening with the Sure Moms back before the new year. And it was really an inspirational experience for me, partially because their leader, Florence Roberson, is an amazing person and really an angel on earth. And because the women involved in that program are incredible, strong leaders in our community, and they were very inspirational. And I'm just really pleased that we're able to move it, or to approve this grant tonight. So that's all I have to say about it. Any other discussion? Commissioner Jefferson?
I just wanted to echo your comments. That is a great program, and you're right, Florence Roberson has led that, and the ladies there have, as you mentioned, they have to be strong, and you know, some of them are not made to be strong, but they learn to become strong because they unite together in this group. So thank you. Mhm.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we are ready to vote. These are just a first reading. We can take them on a voice vote. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against, please say nay. Okay, motion carries. So now,
If I may ask Mr. Jalou a question. We only meant to pull the treasurer's report, not the borrowing resolution, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The delinquent tax borrowing was intended to go to this
Okay.
evening.
So we just need another motion to move item C under the first reading.
Support.
any discussion? Okay, hearing none. So we can do a voice vote on that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say nay. Motion carries. And then we will go back to the resolution 9B, a resolution approving an amendment to the 2021-2022 annual operating budget for Washtenaw County Community Health. Any discussion? Commissioner
Thanks,
Morgan?
Chair. Diana, am I sending suggestions or questions your way?
Yes.
Okay, I have a few potentially quick questions. One being the position creations. I'm wondering, I feel, I don't really want to pose that question to you because I feel like maybe that's a question that Trish might want to answer.
Oh.
But I'm curious if somebody might be able to, oh, perfect.
Well.
There she, yeah, she just appears.
Magic.
Yeah.
Perfect. I was just curious if somebody could walk us through the position creations, particularly the creating positions and then immediately holding them vacant. I was just a little confused as to that procedurally.
So the intention there, Commissioner Morgan, is that right now through our CCBHC efforts and our continued millage efforts, we are really expanding the individuals who CMH is serving. And so, and now with CCBHC, it's also the expectation that we will continue to market more and more and more and increase the numbers of individuals that we served. So right now, what we want to do tonight is, because we have all this additional funding, is actually get the positions created. However, place them on hold vacant, because we're not intending to fill them right away, but more so as demand continues to ramp up and that while we're still monitoring our budget, that we will be taking them off of hold vacant as we move forward with these efforts.
Excellent. Thank you. That helps a lot because I was very confused about that. So thank you. The other question I have was, so can you tell me if the $2.35 an hour increase for the direct care workers, that's wonderful, that came from the state, is that permanent or temporary?
You know, all things point to that the state is finally, and I mean, MDHHS and the legislators are recognizing, as was talked a lot tonight by others and your colleagues, that it is something that is desperately needed. You know, I would hesitate to ever say that anything is absolutely permanent. What I can say is that this issue has finally gotten raised to the level where I do feel more confident than ever. The other thing that I will mention is that the CMH board last Friday did reach consensus on a legislative one pager that we worked with our colleagues over at Chart on to use as a one pager with our local delegation, as well as spread with other of our colleagues across the state. So I can't tell you that it is permanent, but it does, we will be seeing those baked into at least the CMH rates in April for this fiscal year. I am very hopeful though.
Okay, great. Well, so my question with that was, do we, if we're going to have $2.35 an hour increased, and we have providers that are getting exemptions, maybe that is actually a Diane question. Are we reviewing that annually I guess what I want to say is, if we've given people exemptions to the living wage policy, and then they're getting an additional amount of support from the state or from CMH of over $2 an hour to pay workers more, that's great. But do they still need those exemptions, or can we ask them to pay more?
We do have the exemption process that runs on an annual basis. However, last year, I believe Commissioner Scott, you brought up that you wanted to really review that whole process. And so we need to sit down and look at what the exemption process is in totality, getting ready for if we need to do an exemption process this year. We were going to also look at the living wage ordinance as part of that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I would just want to make sure that we do come back to that, because I certainly think of the exemptions being necessary where needed, but I think of, the folks that shared the concerns around the auto insurance reform. If they're only getting $14 an hour to provide these services, and then they certainly aren't going to be able to pay $15 an hour. I wouldn't want to put anybody in that situation, but if we are seeing an increase in that funding going to these folks, then I want to make sure that money is getting into the hands of the direct care workers, and we're not providing exemptions where we don't need to.
Agreed.
Cool. And then the last question I had was more, I guess, a process question for the next meeting, is seeing if we could get a little bit more detail on the budget amendment, because I looked through there and it shows pretty broad, like, line item changes, but it's not a lot. So if somebody were to say, oh, you're moving $16 million more into CMH, that's wonderful, that's great. But if they were to say, what is that going to do, or where are we spending that money? I wouldn't really be able to answer that question. And so I'm curious if we can provide maybe some additional detail on where those resources will go.
What I can do, Commissioner, is include the, what I can do, Commissioner, is include the financial status report in the budget that the CMH board looks at, which is much more detailed as far as where those dollars go according to the services. So if that would be more helpful, I'm happy to provide that detail.
Okay, yeah, I think that would help alleviate my concern, probably, just so that it's just a lot of money moving in a really great way. This is a really positive thing. But I just always like to be able to say, here's what it's going to, rather than just personnel or other services. That doesn't really tell them much. So cool. Thank you so much. I think that's all my questions, and I appreciate the time, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Beeman.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick question here. I see a lot of great roles, and my concern just revolves around the salaries for these. Having to do some hiring recently at my organization, we're seeing people at the higher end of what we would normally expect to pay for a salary in the market that we're in right now. How comfortable are you with these figures? I see there is a nice amount of wiggle room between the low and high end. But how are you feeling, given the current market, that these salaries will be competitive?
So we do have ongoing recruitment challenges with the current salary scales and our competitors that we have, in the county and surrounding. I know the MAG negotiations, we're all looking very forward to that continuing and hopefully get some relief with that. We are seeing that most of the people coming in to interview at the clinical level really are, their expectation is already midpoint for our salary scale. And so we're having to do, some follow-up with HR and kind of look at our hiring practices as a whole. But for the most part, our attrition rate is so high right now that really the budgetary impact of that is not a concern necessarily. It's more or less just getting that hire in and hopefully retaining them.
And Commissioner Beeman, if I could just add, I appreciate you bringing that up because it is a reality. We've got many, many irons in the fire to try to combat some of that through some other strategies. But at some point, we just had a discussion with a leadership group today that we may need to exercise, the option of maybe bringing some more salaries to your attention to get approval to make sure that we could onboard people that are really expecting and will not take the wages that we are offering.
Great, thank you. That was my concern was, looking at the budget adjustments and looking at what's here, would you be coming back? Is this a big enough ask for these roles that you're looking to fill given the current market? So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Okay, hearing no more discussion, we're ready for a voice vote. All those in favor, please, of the resolution approving an amendment to the 2021-2022 annual operating budget for Washtenaw CMH, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against, please say nay. Motion carries. All right, we are on to, see, even with papers, we're still having to take some time. Commissioner Scott?
I'm ready to move things for you, Chair.
Thank you, thank you. We're ready for the, see, I lost my place.
I know exactly where we are.
Then please, Commissioner Scott, take it away.
All right, I got your back. All right, I'm on 2, final reading. Resolution approving the acceptance of the Weatherization Assistance Program Deferral Reduction Grant. 2B, a resolution to approve all formula grants received by the Office of Community and Economic Development. 2C, a resolution authorizing the county administrator to sign the 2020 Homeland Security Grant Program. 2D, a resolution authorizing the pause of the Washtenaw County Pollution Prevention Regulation. 2E, a resolution to encourage generational success and invest in our community's health and well-being through a series of targeted investments in under-resourced communities as part of the Washtenaw County Rescue Plan. And do you want me to go on to 3 too here?
Let's just do this one. I think there's a little.
Then I'm at that point.
Any discussion? Or does any, first of all, sorry, does anybody want to pull any of these for separate consideration? Okay, any discussion? Commissioner Morgan?
Sure, and I apologize if this is something that was discussed at the last meeting, but I do have one question regarding item 2D, the resolution authorizing the pause of the Washtenaw County Pollution Prevention Regulation to review, etc. I'm just curious why we need to pause the program to review it, or if I don't know. Did you guys have that conversation? Okay. I will, if folks are comfortable with it, then I assume there's a reasonable answer. It just seemed odd to me, but I will follow up after the meeting. Thanks, Chair.
So, thank you. I had some conversations with the former Water Resources Commissioner, Janice Bobrin, who had also had some conversations with the current Water Resources Commissioner, Evan Pratt, and a few other people. And so I had some very serious concerns about it. And after that conversation, while I'm still not excited about the pause, I felt like it made sense that there are protections in place that as a practical matter, it's probably not going to make a difference, and that the program is, it was first brought in I think in the 90s, and is still being run in a very similar way, and this pause will probably allow it to be much more effective going forward. I would normally not be in favor of a pause while reviewing a regulation or a program. But in this case, I do think it does make sense. Thank you. Okay, so then, is there any other discussion? Okay, then we are ready for our roll call vote. Mr. Mulcahy?
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman.
Yes.
Items passed.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to move the single reading resolutions. Item number 3. Does anybody want to pull any for separate consideration? Commissioner LeBlanc?
Chair, I don't know if Josie Parker is still on the line or not, but if she is, I wonder if we could just give her a chance to say hello, and if she's not, we'll just proceed and pass it.
Yes, of course, Commissioner LeBlanc. Mr. Lindeman is checking. Ms. Parker, are you on the line?
We are,
I am trying to unmute. Ah,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on the recognition of your service and leadership at the Ann Arbor District Library. Would you like to say a few words?
I appreciate this recognition from the county commission. I have spent many years working with various county commissioners, and it's always been productive and a pleasure. I've listened to the conversation this evening, and I just want to say how much I admire all of the people who will run for election to be a county commissioner, because the decisions you have to make are so huge and they matter so much to so many people. And I'm gratified by that work. I want to particularly thank Commissioner Labar, because I think he's responsible more or less for my being here tonight. And all the years that I worked with Andy in various ways, from the time he was with Mr. Dingle's office and they were doing office hours at the library to now. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I have to shout out to Trish Cortez at Community Mental Health. I do not know how we at the public library would manage through many of the issues we manage on a day-to-day basis that aren't as obvious to the general public, because we try hard to make it as safe and quiet and restful a place as we can for everyone. But without community mental health, we would not have been successful over all these years. And I just want to say that. So thank you.
Thank you. As somebody who has spent many, many pleasurable hours and constructive hours at the Ann Arbor District Libraries, and also notice that there are many people who use the library as a safe place, I want to thank you for your service and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think then we have more comments, more discussion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank her for having the compassion to call in community mental health, because I've been a member of this county for years and spent some time in both Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor libraries. And I know the challenges that they're facing because of things that happen. And I just thankful that community health could be there to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. This is part of what makes our community a loving community. Any other discussion? Commissioner Morgan?
A different item, not
I think we're ready to move on to that item. Commissioner Morgan?
Great, thank you. So I think we're on, so make sure I follow correctly. We're on item 2A, right? The CMH bylaws.
Yes.
So I just have one question reading through those, or actually two quick questions. One being, I'm curious about the removal of meeting monthly. Is there a reason for that? Is it have the meetings more spread out? In the bylaws, it says it crosses out the line, the board shall meet monthly. I don't know if Andy or you guys have any idea?
I'm happy to take that.
Andy, Commissioner LeBar is raising his hand, or Trish.
Okay.
either
Through the power of the internet, I would refer to Trish. Give a better answer.
So the CMH board members had approached me and my leadership team about reducing the number of meetings. We were having program, finance, the millage, and executive, and then also the full board meeting. Those were the ones that are happening almost every month. And so what several board members had asked is that based on a lot of their participation on other boards of whether that could be actually reduced, that seemed to be, there was a lot of repetitive items that came from between a committee meeting and the full board meeting. So what we're attempting and trying out, it's like a trial period right now, is that we do have a combined program and finance that I think works a lot better actually, and a millage committee meeting every month along with a full CMH board meeting, but then on the alternate months that the executive committee would meet. So there is a board meeting every single month. The committees plus the full board meet 1 month, and the next month will be just executive, and then it'll continue like that throughout the year. So those were some recommendations made by the CMH board, who were feeling that the meeting frequency was just too much.
Okay, that doesn't cause me concern. I certainly think that makes sense. I do know, I think most of our bylaws for the county boards and committees usually indicate like some minimum frequency. And so I just want to raise that one area of concern. Obviously, you're not going to just stop meeting. It sounds like you actually have a heck of a lot of meetings. But I guess I want to raise that as a concern, and that if you remove some minimum amount of meetings, I do worry about that because usually there's something said in there. The only other concern I had was the annual plan and budget shall occur by the end of September instead of in September. And I'm curious if you could explain that a bit, because I know we always run into a bit of a logjam between the CMH board and the county board in getting that budget through in the right amount of time that you all need us to get it through. So if CMH were to wait until the end of September to pass that budget, I don't think we would have time to pass it at the Board of Commissioners, if I'm remembering correctly, but I'm sure you have it.
I'm happy to take that one.
Thanks.
We did consider that we wanted to kind of leave September a little more wide open because of the problems that we have had the past few years. So just to be safe, in case it happens that we need to go back to the CMH board prior to 9:30 to make an adjustment that maybe occurred at BOC. That's why we're kind of leaving it a little bit open-ended for the month of September.
Okay, so that's to accommodate that, I don't know how else to phrase it, logjam, I guess, that we run into. Okay, great. I think those are my only concerns, and I appreciate you providing those answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner LeBar, did you want to make a comment? Okay. Any other discussion on that item or any of the items within here? Okay, I have one item on the supplemental resolution amending the bylaws for the Washtenaw County Board of Health from the Health Department. And I will say that I had some concerns about the provision in there that said that commissioners should not hold leadership positions. And I want to thank Commissioner Hodge and also Commissioner Scott for taking the time to discuss that with me. I'm not going to say that we necessarily still see things exactly the same way. And I think that's because our experiences have been different on the different boards and committees that we have served on. And after talking about it with Commissioner Scott, she put it in a way that made perfect sense for me. And so I am prepared to support that tonight. And so thank you, Commissioner Scott and Commissioner Hodge. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I still have concerns on that item. I want to make clear this is a very unique individual circumstance, and I would absolutely not vehemently oppose this addition to any other county board or committee to make commissioners secondary members of those boards and committees, which is a concern that I have. I will support this tonight because I have heard sound arguments for this individual case, but I want to make sure that we do not add this to other boards and committees because I don't think commissioners should be seen as anything different than any other members of boards and committees. The other reason I support this is because I think there are a slew of really logical and sound changes included in these amendments overall. So overall, I think this is a good package of changes, changing from liaison to actual member of the public health board, adding 2 commissioners. I think these are really good things. I really don't like that language that I see as quite negative toward us as commissioners. We are community members. We are elected by folks in the community, but that doesn't mean we're out of touch with them or in any way secondary to anyone else in the community. I just want to make sure that that is clear and that we don't set any sort of precedent with other boards and committees to say that commissioners aren't there in the same manner as every other citizen showing up to participate. So I will support it because I've heard good arguments from Commissioner Scott and Hodge and some others in the community and on the Public Health Board, but I still have concerns and I will get over them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Anyone else? Okay, we are then ready to take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge.
Yes.
Items passed.
Thank you. And then I guess we need a motion for approval of claims.
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote for that.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. Next is item 10, report of the county administrator.
Thank you, Chair. Wow, good evening, Commissioners. Sorry for the boom. Yeah. Just a few items this evening. You should have in your inbox a document related to the flood response dollars that we received from the state of Michigan. I'm pleased to report that we have pushed out all of those resources. We had, in fact, had one recipient come in today in tears, so very grateful for the support. So those documents are in your inbox. If you have specific questions around the process, we stand ready to answer. But all of the dollars that we received from the state of Michigan have been allocated. So thank you guys for your support in that process. Second,
I'm sorry that you're done.
Second, I'm also pleased to report that we have gone through a very thorough selection process for the county's public information officer. Pleased to report that Crystal Campbell has accepted that role. She is not here this evening because she is on a county, at a county business event. And I expect to have her here at the next meeting to be greeted by this board. This information was shared with our department head group this morning and it was received very, very well. So I just want to say, oh, she's here. All right. How are you? She is here this evening virtually. Crystal, I don't know if you want to say anything to the board. Again, she was received very, very well this morning at the department head and CMLT meeting.
Good evening, everyone. I am en route in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, where the Racial Equity Office, along with several other county departments, will attend a conference/boot camp starting tomorrow. I'm really excited. I'm excited to get to work. I'm excited about the process and working with you all, and excited to get back to post-COVID normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Two other items. I'm joined this evening by our public health officer, Jimena Loveluck. She is going to provide you with an update on the mask mandate.
Thank you, Administrator Dill, and good evening, Commissioners. I wanted to just very quickly provide an update now that CDC has updated their measures of COVID-19 at the community level. Many of you have probably already seen this information, but just wanted to be sure that there was a common understanding of these new levels that basically change a little bit the metrics that we are looking at and really add hospitalization data at the local level as a way to assess level of risk and level of COVID in our communities. And so CDC has created 3 levels: low, medium, and high. And certainly you can find information about how those levels are calculated, but we will keep that information updated, of course, on our website. Currently, Washtenaw County is at a medium level. And so we are working to communicate exactly what that means. And in particular, the biggest change is really around recommendations related to masking. So at a medium level, CDC no longer broadly recommends masking in public indoor places. Of course, it's important to recognize that at all levels, whether it's low, medium, or high, people can make that individual choice to wear a mask. And of course, based on risk as well. So if people have symptoms, if they've tested positive for COVID, or they've been exposed to someone with COVID, obviously, we want people to continue to wear a mask. But the general recommendation for public indoor masking no longer is in place with a medium level of community spread. Now, of course, it's also important to remember that we can move between these levels. And so certainly if we were, and hopefully trends will continue, we won't go up to high, but if we go up to high, then there are different recommendations that we would be making. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that this really changes the recommendations around masking. And of course, we want to be very mindful that if there are people who are immunocompromised, or you live in a household or you're in contact with someone who's immunocompromised or more vulnerable for severe outcomes related to COVID, then that's also an important factor to take into consideration related to wearing a mask. I will take an opportunity also to just share that with these changes, we continue to focus on promoting vaccination, and we know that how incredibly important that tool is in preventing serious outcomes. I will share some recent data that was developed by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services that looked at December 2021 and what we saw in terms of difference in outcomes for people who are not vaccinated versus those who are vaccinated and boosted. And so in December, and remember this is during kind of the Delta and beginning of the Omicron wave, adults who were 18 years of age and older, who were fully vaccinated and boosted, adults 18 years of age who were not vaccinated had a 4.9 times greater chance of getting COVID-19 than those who were fully vaccinated and boosted, and an 88.5 times greater chance of dying from COVID-19 compared to those who are not vaccinated. So again, just really showing the ongoing impact and effectiveness that vaccines are showing in preventing serious illness and serious outcomes. So we are working with county administration to adapt county recommendations and requirements related to the use of masks for employees. And we'll hopefully have more information to share broadly. We did discuss this at the department head meeting this morning, and working closely with county administration to develop a communication to update our guidance, particularly in the workplace as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Commissioner Beeman. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jimena. Just a quick question. We know that vaccines work and they're saving people. What are the recommendations for mothers like me who have little ones that cannot be vaccinated because of age? Are there different guidelines in terms of maskings at preschools and that type of thing?
No specifically different guidelines. We did just update our K through 12 guidance that's available on our website, and that does include our recommendations for child care settings or preschools. Again, the most important thing really being around testing following isolation and quarantine protocols. And of course, the countywide public health mask order was rescinded effective on Monday, but there are schools and childcare centers that are making their own decisions around requirements related to masking.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner LeBar.
Thanks, Chair. Director Loveluck, do you need anything from this board, either collectively or individually at this time, that's going to help you and your department do your job? I was being serious and asking that.
Well, I think that I'll just share the ongoing support related to additional allocation that was provided to the health department for ongoing COVID response is very appreciated. And I think we've seen how we have needed to pivot during this pandemic. And so we certainly are looking at a little bit of breathing room right now with lower cases and lower hospitalization rates. But we know that we have to be prepared should there be a new variant or should there be another surge. And so it's really important that we are able to communicate that with you quickly and share with you how we might need to focus in some different ways to either provide additional resources or services or to adjust our recommendations to the public.
All right, thank you, Director Loveluck. I appreciate it.
So Director Loveluck, before you leave the line, I do have a couple of additional items. I think that we all know by now that Jimena Loveluck has been named by the Washtenaw County United Way, the Woman of the Year. We are all very, very, very proud and want to congratulate her with that. This board has authorized and I believe will move forward a resolution later in this meeting. I wanted to make you aware of that. In addition, I have a communication that will go in your file. We'll clean it up and make certain that it's presented to you at a more formal date and time. But it is dated March 2nd of 2022. Dear Ms. Loveluck, it is my honor and pleasure to formally recognize you for your tireless service to Washtenaw County. You have faced significant challenges during an early point in your tenure as the Washtenaw County Health Officer. You have guided our health department through a global COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring that we follow the science, understood the ever-changing guidance from federal sources, and responded to the needs of our community. You have adopted and adjusted as you continue to navigate an evolving landscape, and you have served with the county's mission, vision, and guiding principles in mind. I would like to personally congratulate you on your United Way Woman of the Year Award. The United Way of Washtenaw County is a valued community partner. They recognize, as I do, that your exceptional leadership has been crucial in the developing and operationalizing strategies that save lives. I have no doubt that our county's vaccination rate and rapidly decreasing positivity rate are due in large part to your unwavering commitment to public health and to the Washtenaw County community. Your added immense value to the Washtenaw County team. You add immense value to the Washtenaw County team, and I am pleased to recognize you for your Administrator's Award and for your ongoing leadership, adaptability, and dedication. I look forward to our continued work together as we move into a resilient and sustainable future. My best, Gregory Dill. This will go in your file and we will clean it up and make certain that we present it to you at a more formal time. But I think on behalf of this organization, certainly your colleagues at the department head level, we want to say thank you so much for your contributions to our community.
Thank you so much, Administrator Dill. I really appreciate the recognition. And I have to say, it's so wonderful to get that recognition, but particularly because public health leaders are finding themselves in such challenging times. And I just want to also recognize the amazing work of our health department and our health department staff. I share this recognition with all of them. And I would just ask that for the county and for the Board of Commissioners, please, if anything, this has shown in terms of public health, the pandemic has highlighted the importance of investing in public health, including our public health workforce, our public health nurses, and our staff. So I appreciate the recognition and look forward to your continued support so we can continue to work to address health inequities in our county. Thank you so much.
That will conclude my report.
Thank you. Next is the report of the Chair of the Board of Commissioners. And last meeting, I asked us all to take a moment to celebrate having taken the first vote on our second package of American Rescue Plan funds. And so tonight, I want to ask us to celebrate our second vote, approving this $11.3 million allocation to help our community recover from COVID and start really investing in a different way in our community. We have allocated almost $6 million to build a strong, equity-driven health department. We just heard about the importance of investing in our health department. Tonight, we voted to invest almost $6 million more into our health department. Launching a mobile services support initiative. This is something that Commissioner Sanders had been working on before she came to the board, and it's something that she brought to us as a commissioner, and just an incredible value here. We allocated $729,000 to build out, I believe it is 2 buses that will go to every corner, the far reaches, the middle, wherever it is needed in this county to take services to people who need them. And that is a very exciting thing. Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. The third thing we're investing in is creating a community priority fund, $8 million to essentially grassroots organizations. There may be some that are bigger than grassroots within the areas most affected by COVID-19, particularly 48197, 48198. When I heard that we were going to have money allocated, I thought we should do something like that. But I was thinking $1 million. I never thought at that point that $8 million would be going out into the community. And here I want to thank all of the commissioners, Administrator Dill, the entire administration staff, Mr. Lindemann, and our community partners who made it clear what the need was and what the potential was within our community to make use of those funds. So that is my report. So next, we have items for current and future discussion. I know we have 2 items, and I say that so I don't forget the one I've got written on my hand. I am looking for a motion to honor our public health director.
I will happily move that.
I'm happy to support.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Commissioner Scott?
I mean, I will just say that I think that our administrator summed up a lot of what we were all thinking about Director Lovelock. And it has been a challenging year for anybody in healthcare, especially running a county public health department. I believe that she has done this with grace and with the willingness to continue to learn and grow and respond to our community, and that she continues to do that. It is my privilege and honor to be working with her as a part of the Public Health Board, and I couldn't be more thrilled to see her get the recognition that she so much deserves after this time. Indeed, everyone at the Public Health Department and under her leadership. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott.
I would add that it's just truly been an honor to be on Board of Health during this period of time, and then to be on it prior to the pandemic and get to know Jimena throughout the pandemic and see all the work that she's done in the health department and the staff. It's spend some time at the health department and really get to see everything that's going on in there. I mean, they are doing so many things that you wouldn't guess that the health department would be responsible for. And her leadership throughout this process has just been incredible. And particularly in an environment where people are attacking public health. I mean, it's tough to go to work every day knowing that you're going to hear some really ridiculous attacks. I mean, we can, I'm sure you can ask if you want to read some of the terrible things that people are calling in and saying to them, but they still keep fighting hard. And you can see the progress that we're making. So I want to thank Jimena for just the incredible ongoing work and the perseverance as we continue battling the pandemic.
Thank you. Mr.
I
Sanders.
just want to add that I just want to say that I appreciate her grace throughout this process. I am one of the commissioners that had some very frank conversations with her, and her demeanor never changed. Her professionalism never changed. And I would hope that she has taken the daggers out of the picture that might be hanging up in her office of me. But, you know, under the circumstances, you know, we cannot underscore how important her leadership and her staff was in the midst of a life-threatening pandemic. So well-deserved, and I appreciate the fact that she stayed with us, because she could have quit us. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. Commissioner Beaman.
I want to echo my fellow commissioners and just add how much I appreciate the willingness to go to every corner of the county to help address this pandemic, from rural to urban to suburban, getting out there where people need the resources. I know in my community where we don't have a pharmacy, you can't get a vaccination. It's just been absolutely life-changing for many of our residents. So thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Just want to add, I wasn't going to say anything because I think you've all been so elegant in talking about how amazing Jimena has been. But I just want to say that we're seeing Jimena now after 2 years of undergoing this pandemic and leading our health department through this work and really helping lead all of us through this work. And I will say from the first year when the pandemic hit, and I had the, I guess, honor of serving as chair, responsibility is maybe feels like a more appropriate word these days, given how much work falls on that role. And Jimena has had the same calm, thoughtful demeanor throughout the entire crisis. And I just want to make sure that that's known. I'm glad that we don't have to talk as frequently now. She speaks with Sue and Greg, I'm sure, just as much, but a lot of conversations in those early days of how to appropriately handle shutting things down, setting up requirements, issuing public health orders, things that we haven't had to do before. And I will just say that she has handled, I think, to Commissioner Sanders' comment, certainly all of us extremely well. You have 9 commissioners who all have different ideas around how things should operate, and meeting all of our expectations and the community's expectations and her staff is just an overwhelming feat that she managed to achieve and accomplish so well, and with that calm, thoughtful demeanor. I'm sure she had other thoughts that she didn't share with us on occasion, but she never showed that. She was always just a true leader. And so I thank you, Jimena, and we're so lucky to have her. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Jefferson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say that when we started with Jimena in 2020, she was new to the job, and to be hit with such a heavy responsibility as COVID-19, and to be able to navigate through that with imperfections, but mostly if a person doesn't have imperfections, I think something was wrong. But the reality is her grace and her ability to answer the call has shown to be sufficient in dealing with this COVID-19. I've had many times made calls to her and still make calls to her and emails to her. And she's always responded professionally with the reality of what I'm asking to be given attention to, on whether there is a resolution or not. And that is always highly respected, because you have a person that is dealing with what they have instead of trying to appease others. I've worked with her years back when she was dealing with HIV in our community, and they came around with the it was with HARC, and they had a van that would distribute condoms and things like that, and talk to people about it. And when Ypsilanti was in the highest ratio of the state of HIV, and that's when I first met her. But I'm really happy for when anyone gets recognition for their work. It's not going to make everyone happy, but the one that has to be made happy, and I'm pretty sure she is, about her ability to stick in there with us, all of our complaints and all of our desires to have things done in certain ways. And I believe that she can be happy with the way that she's addressed those things. There's always, in my community, more people than I would like to have seen die. Several families had multiple deaths. I had multiple deaths, mother and son, things like this. So of course, there's always a feeling of more needs to be done. But she has handled that with the grace that, she's built for that type of work. I believe the compassion that she has shown throughout this pandemic, with our church community, our clergy, and allowing those public pop-ups to come into our community for testing and vaccinations, is a deep respect for that in our community. So, it's like it's never happened before. And so can't really have anything to measure it by. So I just want to congratulate her on being recognized by United Way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson. Anyone else? Commissioner LeBar.
Yeah, Chair, just briefly, I echo everything that's been said, lauding Jimena and her work. I just want to especially recognize her ability to project calm, consistency, and clarity in public. There's several events where her voice and what she said, how she said it, and how she explained it to the public were critical, frankly, to keeping folks, I don't want to say sane, but stable at really, really difficult times. And nobody trains you for that. That's not on your cover letter when you apply for the job. So I think we're incredibly fortunate to have Director Loveluck. And I hope I hope we have many uneventful years from here on out. Thanks.
Thank you.
One
Commissioner
last thing, Madam Chair.
Jefferson.
I had to be conscious of it too, but I'm pretty much conscious of it every time. She is our health officer, not director. We have a medical director. She is our public health officer. which is a position of distinction. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Machewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to concur in all of the thoughts that have been expressed by my colleagues, and thank him and the staff at the Health Department for their work in my district during the pandemic as well. I'm struck by the comments by Administrator Dill in bringing this forward tonight, and that him and his colleagues here at the county, are with their support and bringing this forward. We are fortunate to have her. I think what many of us would consider to be the best public health officer in the state. And quite frankly, I'm proud of us as a county, as a place where we are celebrating our public health officer, not arguing with her, and we are believing in her leadership, and we are following her guidance and recommendations based on science. I think it's something that as a community we can be very proud of. The fact that we have not devolved into ideological disputes and use this as a tool for something destructive. And I think that a large part of that is a factor of county leadership on the administrative side, on the elective side, and as public health officer herself. So quite proud to say that we have the best public health officer in the state. So thank you, Amanda, for all your work.
Thank you, Commissioner Machewski. Anyone else? Okay, so then I would like to make a comment too. I agree with what everybody said, and Commissioner Sanders. Okay, sorry. I agree with what everybody said. I have thought many times during the pandemic that the leadership that a community has is very important in the outcome that the community has. And in our public health officer, Jimena Lovelock, we have had steady, informed, compassionate leadership. She has grown and learned through the pandemic. She adjusted when adjustment was needed. She was always cheerful with me. I don't know, I mean, like, it's easy to feel like I'm exaggerating, but the pandemic itself wasn't, it's not over yet, but the pandemic, the severe part of the pandemic was an exaggeration. Every day was an exaggeration of, so many things. And I do believe that the strength and steadiness of our public health officer helped us do a better job of leading, helped our administrator do a better job of leading, and our residents felt good. They felt good for the most part about staying home, staying away from each other, talking from 6 feet away outside, wearing masks, getting vaccinated as soon as possible. And I know that we had a little bit of protesting, but it didn't get worse. People kind of accepted what was happening, and we're coming out of the pandemic better. We lost too many people. We've all mourned too much, some of us more than others. And Commissioner Jefferson, I'm very sorry for your loss. It's been a really hard time, and I'm just so glad that we have had our public health officer at the helm. So thank you again. All right, we have one more item. I am looking for a motion to approve. Oh, I'm so sorry. We talked so long, I forgot we needed to vote. The resolution honoring Jimena Lovelock. We are going to be taking a roll call vote. Thank you.
Commissioner Machewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner LeVar.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve me signing as chair on behalf of the entire Board of Commissioners supporting the grant for the Land Link program by the Conservation District.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski.
Yes.
Item passes.
Thank you. With that, we don't have any pending items, so then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to the next session.
Support.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. That was a great meeting. Thank you for helping.